Michael Thompson, please enter your 2008 rebirth wish list. Wish number 1, bankrupt the gorgeous Olivia Sullivan. Wish number 2, upgrade Olivia Sullivan's super flat chest to aircraft carrier size. Wish number 3, make tons of money and buy Olivia Sullivan's freedom from the Sullivan family. Wish number 10, hope I get a system to help me make money effortlessly. I just want to slack off. January 2008, just after the first snow. The weather today was exceptionally cold. The chill of the melting snow seemed to seep right into your bones. Inside a high school in Green Valley, students were in class. There was no heating in the southern classrooms. Students were bundled up like snowmen, pausing frequently as they wrote to breathe warm air onto their hands and rub them together vigorously. I'll explain this problem one last time. When the x-axis coordinate. At the front of the room, the pot-bellied middle-aged math teacher pointed his teaching stick at the blackboard, spitting slightly as he lectured passionately. Below the podium, in the second-to-last row, a clean-cut boy was staring blankly at a point in midair, his jaw dropped in astonishment. System loading, current progress 99%. The text floated in a bordered box in the upper right corner of his vision, just like movie subtitles. The shock of this inexplicable phenomenon, something that defied all belief and understanding, finally coalesced into 2 words. Holy shit! The sudden shocked outburst instantly jolted his classmates awake. Everyone turned towards the source of the sound. The good-looking boy in the second-to-last row. He had abruptly stood up, his shocked expression quite a sight. Of course, the look the math teacher gave him was also quite something. Michael Thompson, do you have an objection to my explanation of this problem? Michael Thompson remained stunned for a good while before snapping back to reality. Seeing the teacher's face flushed dark red with anger, he finally stammered out after a long pause. Holy, it was a great explanation. Thank you. Now, take your paper, get out, and stand in the hall. You got it. Michael swiftly gathered his papers from the desk and, amidst the roaring laughter of the entire class, dashed out of the classroom. But even standing outside in the hallway as punishment, his mind was still reeling. Oakwood High School. This is my old high school, all right. But I'm in my 30s. Haven't I been out of high school for over a decade? Could it be? I've time traveled. Michael looked down at his hands. The previously injured middle finger on his left hand was now perfectly fine and flexible. The calluses were gone too, his hands pale and smooth like a teenager's. And the system loading text in his vision hadn't disappeared. What the hell is going on? Inside the classroom, a short girl sitting right in the front row, center desk, was slumped over, looking a bit pale and gently rubbing her stomach. Could it be I've time traveled? What year is it? Definitely not 2021. And what the heck is this text? Suddenly, a voice echoed in her mind, making Olivia Sullivan jump. She snapped her head up, looking around in confusion, trying to find whoever had just spoken and startled her. But the surrounding students seemed not to have heard anything, and the teacher carried on with his lecture. The voice had been so loud. Sitting in the front row, she'd heard it clearly. There was no way the teacher hadn't heard it. How could the notoriously short-tempered math teacher ignore a student disrupting the class? Could it be I misheard? Her deskmate saw Olivia's strange behavior and whispered, Olivia, just hang in there. Class is almost over. No, I don't need to go to the bathroom. Olivia blushed instantly, hastily whispering her explanation. She lowered her head, pretending to be nonchalantly listening and taking notes. Hey, it's healed. It really healed. Holy shit, awesome. The sudden voice startled her again. Just then, her deskmate, Claire Evans, suddenly snickered. She nudged Olivia's elbow and gestured with her chin towards the hallway. Olivia, look. What's Michael Thompson doing? Olivia instinctively glanced towards the classroom door. She saw the clean-cut, handsome boy standing outside, holding up the middle finger of his left hand with a goofy grin on his face. And the direction his finger was pointing was aimed squarely at the math teacher on the podium. His finger was even bending and straightening repeatedly, clearly provocative. Claire and Olivia were in the front row, right below the podium. Their whispering immediately drew the ire of the lecturing math teacher. Just as he was about to reprimand them, he noticed they were both looking outside. He instinctively followed their gaze and saw Michael Thompson giving him the middle finger from the classroom doorway. Math teacher. He tossed his notes onto the desk. Class, review the next problems yourselves. Michael Thompson, get over here. Tell me what your problem is. What the F? Teacher, that's not what I meant. Let me explain. The classroom erupted in laughter, and Olivia's deskmate Claire Evans was laughing so hard she clutched her stomach, honking like a goose. But Olivia couldn't laugh. She looked at Michael Thompson, who was now getting chewed out with his head down, with absolute astonishment. That voice just now came from Michael Thompson. Claire, did you hear what Michael Thompson said just now? Yeah, he said, "Teacher, let me explain." Claire guffawed, sounding like a goose again. Clearly, she hadn't heard what Olivia had heard. Since class was still in session, the math teacher just gave Michael a stern lecture, told him to come to his office after class, and went back to teaching. But Olivia couldn't focus on the lecture anymore. Her eyes kept darting towards Michael Thompson standing by the door. Inadvertently, their eyes met. Why does Gorgeous keep looking at me? Did she already recognize the charm of her future husband? No, wait, didn't we only start dating in college? I knew it. I always said she had a secret crush on me in high school, but she'd never admit it. Future husband. Olivia's eyes widened, and her face flushed crimson. This guy, what on earth? What nonsense is he spouting? But this time, she noticed Michael definitely hadn't opened his mouth, which meant she was hearing Michael Thompson's thoughts. She's still looking? This damn irresistible charm of mine. That shameless guy. Olivia snapped her head back, annoyed, and started scribbling furiously in her notebook. But Michael's thoughts continued to echo in her mind. Since I've been reborn, should I get together with Gorgeous now? Or stick to the original timeline and wait until college? His thoughts sounded hesitant. The question made Olivia instinctively prick up her ears. But ultimately, she heard Michael's resigned thoughts. Forget it. Better not change the original timeline. Besides, Gorgeous is so strict with me after we get married. I can't even visit the massage parlors. I should enjoy my freedom for a while first. Get back to being the bathhouse king. I wonder if girl number 13 at that house of pleasure near the university town is working yet. Snap. From gripping it too hard, the tip of the ballpoint pen Olivia was holding snapped, and ink leaked out, staining the notebook page black. For some reason, she was starting to feel really angry. Claire Evans heard the commotion and glanced curiously at her deskmate. That's when she saw the usually quiet and gentle Olivia Sullivan gritting her teeth, her face contorted with fury. The small hand gripping her pen trembled slightly, the nib snapping under the pressure. Ink bled onto her notes, staining a dark patch. Who managed to get our resident angel this worked up? Claire wondered. Olivia Sullivan sensed her deskmate's strange gaze and immediately smoothed her expression, pretending nonchalantly to take out a new pen cartridge from her pencil case. Inside, however, she couldn't stop fuming. What kind of nonsense is this guy spouting? How could I possibly marry him in the future? Olivia was furious. She'd had a strict upbringing. Although she was beautiful and even the campus belle of Oakwood High School, her dating experience was zero. Now, out of the blue, someone pops up claiming to be her future husband. Who time traveled back? How could something so ridiculous happen in this world? This was the 21st century. One had to believe in science. Although the fact that she could eavesdrop on Michael Thompson's thoughts wasn't exactly scientific itself. Getting angry made the cramps in her lower abdomen worse. It was that time of the month, and perhaps due to her constitution, it was always excruciatingly painful. Olivia's brows furrowed tightly as she clutched her stomach and laid her head down on the desk. This scene didn't escape Michael Thompson, who was standing outside the classroom as punishment. Gorgeous has that look on her face. Is it that time of the month? So, it hurt this badly even back in high school, huh? It didn't get better until after we were married and had Lucas. Back when we were dating, she always needed me to rub her stomach around this time, or she couldn't sleep. Hearing the buzzing voice in her head, Olivia's eyebrows twitched uncontrollably. Finally, unable to bear it any longer, she slammed her hand on the desk, jumped up, and shouted towards the classroom door, flushing with anger and embarrassment. Can you please stop saying such embarrassing things? Even a girl usually as meek as a bunny rabbit has a few days each month when she can become terrifying. Her outburst silenced the classroom instantly. All the students stared in astonishment at Olivia Sullivan, who had suddenly shot to her feet. The math teacher, grabbing his pointer stick, headed for the door. Michael Thompson, standing out here as punishment and still harassing female classmates. Are you? Michael Thompson, standing outside, was completely dumbfounded. How did this involve him? No, teacher, I didn't say anything. I really didn't say anything just now. What rotten luck. During the lunch break, Michael Thompson returned to the classroom mentally and physically exhausted after a visit to the homeroom teacher's office. He slumped onto his desk, cursing his misfortune under his breath. For disrupting class order and harassing a female student, he'd been warned by the homeroom teacher to have his parents come in tomorrow. The thought of going home and explaining this a man almost 30 in reality, and then having to endure a beatdown for both his mom and dad? How humiliating could that be? So lame. Michael rested his head on the desk. The words system loading were still visible in his field of vision, but after pondering for a while, he couldn't make heads or tails of it, so he decided to ignore it. Since something as outrageous as rebirth had already happened, what else couldn't he accept? However, the thought of seeing his mom and dad again stirred a strange feeling inside him. His nose tingled slightly. Michael Thompson's family wasn't fabulously wealthy, but they weren't poor either. His father was a craftsman, a carver, and his mother was a typical housewife. Unfortunately, because his father never wore a mask while working, constantly inhaling dust, he developed lung disease and passed away while Michael was in college. His mother, who had always been very close to his father, lost her pillar of strength, and her health declined steadily in the following years. Now that he was reborn, even if he couldn't convince his dad to change jobs, he had to at least make him take precautions, wear a mask while working, and definitely make him quit smoking. Since I've been reborn, I have to make sure my family lives a good life. Before his rebirth, Michael Thompson had been incredibly successful in his career, earning more money than most people could in several lifetimes. But while he had earned enough money, in the end, he didn't know who he was earning it for. For himself, he already had enough to retire at 30. For his family, after his father died, his mother stayed in their old house back home. Even when Michael wanted to bring her to live in comfort, she refused time and again. Yet he felt like he couldn't stop. Countless eyes were watching him, countless voices urging him forward. How many people were depending on him for money, like baby birds waiting to be fed? That life was exhausting. So exhausting that when he came home at night, he didn't even have the energy to look at the woman he loved most, just collapsed into bed. The next morning, he would invariably be woken by calls from the company, hastily changing clothes for another frantic day. So this time, reborn, Michael Thompson didn't want to be so tired anymore. He just wanted to relax comfortably, do things he enjoyed, and spend more time with the girl he loved and his family. Easier said than done, though. Getting gorgeous ransom from the Sullivan family and marrying her is going to be pretty damn difficult. Michael felt a headache coming on just thinking about it. In his past life, he was a poor kid who started from scratch, and Olivia had suffered a lot because of it. Now that he had a second chance, knowing what hardships his future wife would face, he couldn't just stand by and watch, could he? It pained him to think about it. So, this life, even if he didn't want to make big money, he had to get his hands on a sum, a quite substantial sum, before graduating college. It was the necessary ransom to whisk Olivia Sullivan away from the Sullivan family. Calling it a bride price wouldn't be wrong either. It's 2008 now. Delivery platforms have just been established. E-commerce is budding. Smartphones are just starting to become popular. The 4G era won't start until 2013, and the concept of Bitcoin won't even be introduced until the end of this year. There are plenty of opportunities, but for someone in the arts like me, venturing into these fields is a bit of a leap. Maybe I should stick to my old line of work. But where will the capital come from? Ultimately, he was still a high school student. No bank would lend him money. Ask his family? He'd get his legs broken for sure. But he couldn't possibly wait until after college graduation, accumulate some assets, and then start a business, right? Michael's gaze suddenly fell on Olivia Sullivan, sitting at the front of his row. A thought struck him. Speaking of which, gorgeous is loaded. I remember her mom bought her a school district apartment back in high school. She probably had at least 7 figures in her own bank account back then. She'd brag about it to me after we got married. Maybe I can get some startup fund from her first. It's technically earning her bride price money, right? While Michael Thompson was lost in these thoughts, Olivia Sullivan, sitting at the front of his row and pretending to be asleep on her desk, was secretly listening to his inner monologue. Olivia's eyes gradually widened. This guy is actually scheming to get his hands on her secret stash. Olivia Sullivan pretended to be napping at her desk, but she was secretly listening in on Michael Thompson's thoughts. They sat in the same column of desks, but she was in the front row, and he was in the second to last. The distance, combined with the chatter during the lunch break, made it hard for her to hear everything clearly. Still, Olivia Sullivan caught phrases like 4G era, internet economy, and Bitcoin. She was completely baffled. What on earth were those things? She never heard of them. She had heard of smartphones, though, and even owned one her dad bought her last Christmas. It was huge, like a brick, and inconvenient to carry, so she never brought it to school, sticking with her small flip phone instead. Besides, most students at school didn't have cell phones at all. Owning a flip phone already made her the envy of many. Claire Evans was always borrowing it to level up on Messenger. When she heard Michael Thompson thinking about hitting her up for startup capital, the look on her face was priceless. That shameless jerk, thinking he can use my Christmas savings? Tooey. But how does he know I have 7 figures in my account? She hadn't even told her best friend, Claire Evans. Could he really be? No, impossible. There's no way I'd ever marry someone like him. Speaking of which, they're going to redevelop the old district in Green Valley in 3 years. Buying land there now? Nah, it's too early. I'll think about it when I have more cash. Right now, the main thing is figuring out how to convince Miss Pretty here to make a necessary investment in her future husband. Michael Thompson, sitting near the back, seemed to hit on an idea. He stood up excitedly and headed towards Olivia Sullivan. Hey, Olivia Sullivan. Olivia Sullivan replied stonily, get lost. Right then. Guess that was too blunt, Michael thought. Were Miss Pretty and I on bad terms back in high school? I don't really remember interacting with her much. After school, Olivia Sullivan was quietly packing her bag at her desk. Michael Thompson hadn't left the classroom either. He sat at his desk, looking troubled. That guy, still after her savings. Olivia Sullivan fumed silently. She finished packing and got ready to leave. Just as she reached the classroom door, Michael Thompson's thoughts echoed in her mind again. Oh, right, today's January 4th. Doesn't that mean Miss Pretty's grandpa has a sudden heart attack and dies tomorrow? I think it happened while he was out for a walk. If someone had found him right away, maybe he wouldn't have died. I never really knew the old guy. But after her grandfather died, things seemed rough for Miss Pretty with the Sullivan family. Should I warn her? What excuse could I use? Olivia Sullivan's eyes widened, her pupils contracting sharply. Grandpa is going to die tomorrow? Yeah, I should give Miss Pretty a heads up, Michael decided. He stood up, planning to find a subtle way to warn Olivia Sullivan. But when he turned to look for her, her seat was empty. She'd already left. Michael Thompson scratched his head, frustrated. When did she leave? Oh well, I'll just message her on Messenger when I get home. He didn't have a cell phone back in high school, but his uncle next door had a computer he could easily borrow. Michael Thompson gathered his things and left the school, heading home. Oakwood High School was located in Pine Ridge County, part of the Green Valley area. Michael Thompson didn't live in the main county seat, but in a smaller town under its jurisdiction, the curiously named Pine Creek Town. Pine Creek Town wasn't far from the county center. The bus from a school plaza got him home in about 15 minutes. The Green Valley area was known for its rolling hills, with low mountains and terraced fields being common sights. Michael Thompson's family lived halfway up a hillside, accessible via a hiking trail. Behind their house was a bamboo grove, and next door stood a church. His family lived in 2 connected houses they'd built themselves, sharing a large yard. It wasn't just his immediate family. His grandparents and 4 uncles lived there too. They were all so close. As a child, Michael felt like he had several dads and moms. But after his father passed away, Michael went off to college and rarely came back except for Christmas. Eventually, his aunts and uncles bought their own places in the city and moved out too. He no longer woke up on weekend mornings to the sound of hymns from the church next door, grumbling as he got out of bed. Lost in these bittersweet memories, Michael Thompson slid open the iron gate and stepped into the yard. Just inside, he saw his uncle Ben Thompson squatting on the steps eating from a bowl. Seeing Michael, Benjamin grinned. Mikey, heard her teacher called the house. Come to hide out at your uncle's. Uncle Ben, are you just squatting out here with your dinner, waiting to watch the show? Your aunt's just dishing up mine. She'll be out in a sec, Uncle Ben replied. Michael, half annoyed and half amused, unlocked his front door and went inside, muttering, Mom only has one son. She dotes on me, right? No way she'd actually hit me, seriously. Benjamin Thompson just grinned without saying anything, watching his nephew disappear inside. A moment later, Michael's voice, trying to sound tough but clearly fearful, drifted from the house. Margaret Thompson, what is this behavior? Is this how you treat a flower of our nation, the future of our country? Put the stick down and let's talk properly. You brat, gotten bold, have you? Flirting with girls at school now. Oh, you're something else. If I don't teach you a lesson today, I'll be letting everyone down. What followed was a commotion, the sound of chase and things getting knocked over. Outside, several aunts and uncles had gathered, bowls in hand, craning their necks to watch the drama unfold. Later, at dinner time, Robert Thompson returned home from his workshop. Before he could even change his slippers, Michael stomped over, looking furious. Dad, someone hit your son. Aren't you going to do something about it? Robert Thompson's eyes widened. Who hit you? I'll go beat up their kid. Never mind. Forget I said anything. Michael retreated quickly. Robert Thompson changed his slippers and went inside, chuckling. So, what trouble did you get into this time to make your mom mad? Michael avoided his father's gaze, tried to look nonchalant. What trouble? Nothing. Before he could finish, Margaret Thompson emerged from the kitchen, apron on and spatula still in hand. Your son, she said irritably, has really gotten bold. He's flirting with girls at school now. Margaret Thompson said this, hoping her husband would back her up and lecture their hopeless son. But Robert Thompson, instead of getting angry, just teased him. Fallen in love? Need some cash from Dad. Thanks for the financial support, Dad. Michael Thompson immediately grinned cheekily. How much can you give me? Margaret Thompson's face immediately darkened. She unleashed a tirade. Give you jack squat. Get lost. And you, Uncle Ben Thompson, hiding a secret stash of cash, are you? Come here, you've got some explaining to do. Seeing his dad had drawn her fire, Michael Thompson wisely retreated from the battlefield. Mom, I'm going back to my room to study. Call me when dinner's ready. Get lost. I'm sick of looking at the both of you. You got it. Michael Thompson's room was on the second floor. His parents' bedroom was the sunny one at the front, while his room was at the back. His room wasn't exactly small, but for some reason his parents had gotten him a massive double bed. As a result, once the bed was crammed in, there wasn't even room for a desk. He had to get a small, low table to put on the bed, folding it up and stashing it underneath when it was time to sleep. He lay on his bed for a bit, glancing at the black frame in his field of vision. It still read system initializing, stuck at 99%. No change at all. Had crashed. There wasn't exactly any customer support. Michael Thompson felt like leaving a 1-star review and demanding a refund. But unfortunately, he couldn't find a complaint hotline. He just closed his eyes and decided to ignore it. He closed his eyes, listening to the rustling sound of the bamboo grove outside. A sense of peace he hadn't felt in a long time washed over him. What a mess today has been. I was actually pretty emotional seeing Mom and Dad earlier. When Michael Thompson had first seen Margaret Thompson, his eyes had welled up. His mom back then was still so substantial. Margaret Thompson was quite plump back then. She probably would have broken a bathroom scale. When she laughed hard, her eyes would disappear into the folds of her cheeks. It was only after his father passed away that she gradually withered, her once passionate, fiery personality becoming withdrawn and quiet. Whenever she called him, she'd be so careful, terrified of bothering him, which had always left the Michael Thompson of his past life feeling awful. But the mom standing before him now was the one he remembered so vividly. Michael Thompson had wanted to rush over and give her a huge bear hug, but Margaret Thompson's feather duster had sent him retreating. Any urge he'd felt to cry vanished instantly. A guy who was technically almost 30 getting chewed out by his mom. It was downright humiliating, especially with all the gossiping aunts and uncles watching from the doorway. It's all that pretty girl's fault. She was the one sneaking glances at me in class, and then she turned it all around. Michael Thompson muttered under his breath. But thinking of Olivia Sullivan reminded him he'd planned to warn her about what would happen with her grandfather tomorrow. He sighed and dragged himself out of bed, muttering, well, she is my future wife, after all. Michael Thompson's family didn't own a computer, but his uncle's family did. There was a balcony outside his parents' room, and it connected directly to his uncle's house next door, with no dividing wall. He walked across the balcony to his uncle's door and knocked. Knock, knock, knock. A moment later, the door opened, and a girl around Michael Thompson's age stepped out. Her name was Emily Thompson, his uncle's oldest daughter, about 6 months older than Michael. They were the closest among all the cousins in the extended family. After all, they'd been in the same class since kindergarten, and even though they weren't later on, they still went to the same school. The moment Emily Thompson saw Michael Thompson, she grinned. Mikey, heard Aunt Maggie gave you a beating? Michael Thompson's face instantly darkened. Don't bring that up. Move. I need to use the computer. Demanding to use my computer and acting all tough? Believe it or not, I ought to give you a... Emily Thompson abruptly stopped talking when she spotted the 10-yuan bill pinched between Michael Thompson's fingers. Her attitude did a complete 180. Snatching the bill, she beamed, her eyes crinkling into crescents. One VIP coming through. Right this way, sir. Please watch your step. Figures. She'd always been money-grubbing, even as a kid. That hadn't changed a bit. Michael Thompson went inside, and Emily Thompson even graciously poured him a glass of water. Back in '08, most computers were still desktops. Even though slimmer flat-screen monitors were starting to come out, Emily Thompson's wasn't one of them. It was a couple of years old, after all. As Michael Thompson was booting up the computer, his little cousin, still in kindergarten, toddled over dragging a teddy bear and tapped him on the arm. Michael Thompson looked down at her. His little cousin tilted her head back, looking up at him, and said in a soft little voice, Mikey, Mommy and Daddy said Aunt Maggie hit you cause you were acting like a hooligan. Where did she hit you? Michael Thompson was speechless. Great. So the whole extended family knew his mom had laid into him today, huh? He shot a look at Emily Thompson, who quickly turned her head away, obviously trying hard not to laugh. His little cousin tugged his sleeve again. Mikey, what's acting like a hooligan? Michael Thompson scooped her up, planted a loud mwah on her cheek, and pinched her little nose. That's acting like a hooligan, you little goofball. The little girl giggled, hopped down, and scampered happily out of the room, shouting, I'm going to tell Mommy and Daddy that Mikey acted like a hooligan to me, too. Wait, get back here. After finally bribing his little cousin with the promise of a lollipop tomorrow, Michael Thompson sat back down in front of the computer. The ancient machine had only just finished booting up. Michael Thompson looked at the default Windows interface and the dated icons for the installed software, feeling a bit disoriented. He opened Messenger, but when he tried to log in, he got a password error. That can't be right. I definitely kept using my high school Messenger account. What was my password back then? He hesitated for a while and tried a few more times, but kept saying the password was wrong. Emily Thompson, standing nearby, couldn't watch anymore. What are you doing? Can't you even remember your own password? Scoot over, let me do it. She expertly tapped a few keys and Messenger logged right in. Michael Thompson stared at her, astonished. How did you know my password? Are you dense? Weren't you constantly asking me to keep your Messenger logged in for you? Come to think of it, back then people really did care about their Messenger level. Kids in class used to compete over who had the highest rank. If anyone went to an internet cafe, they were guaranteed to be begged by a crowd to keep their accounts logged in. That was probably the reason Emily Thompson had pestered her dad relentlessly until he bought her a computer. She'd even spent a fair bit of money on those customizable avatars, too. It seemed pretty ridiculous to Michael Thompson now, but it had been completely normal back then. Michael Thompson got on a Messenger and quickly saw his own screen name. TH3 love you to know. Michael Thompson. I actually had a phase like this. Michael Thompson immediately rushed to change his Messenger name to something very generic. Emily Thompson leaned over his shoulder to look, then said disdainfully, Are you always this lame? The crown of nobility is too heavy. Sorry, I'm not worthy. Michael Thompson couldn't explain it to Emily, so he just silently opened Messenger and found Olivia Sullivan in the class group chat. Although he and the beautiful Olivia had been in the same class in high school, they didn't know each other well, barely exchanging a few words throughout their time there, let alone adding each other on Messenger. Michael Thompson started typing a message to Olivia Sullivan. Hey Olivia Sullivan, I heard your grandpa's heart isn't doing too well. As he typed, he suddenly thought this might not be the best approach. He and Olivia weren't close right now. If he suddenly said something like this, she might not believe him and might even suspect he was just trying to hit on her. Got it. Michael Thompson had an idea. He deleted everything in the input field and started typing again. Meanwhile, in a villa in the South Villa district of Green Valley, Olivia Sullivan returned home. As soon as she walked in, she saw her mother arguing with her aunt. I'm just asking, why should the shop on Long Street go to your family? Then take it up with Dad. It was his decision. What can you do? Who knows what nonsense you fed Dad? Anyway, just get out of here. I've already arranged for someone to open a clothing store in that shop. Let me tell you, no. Wait. The household staff didn't dare intervene, only watching timidly from the side. In the living room, several cousins sat together, each engrossed in their phones or game consoles, ignoring the argument completely, without any interaction among themselves. I'm home, she said softly, but no one responded. Even her mother, still arguing with her aunt, didn't glance at her daughter. Olivia Sullivan silently changed her shoes, walked into the living room, and headed upstairs with her backpack. She was used to it. Despite the opulent house, despite quite a few people being home, it felt exceptionally cold. Olivia Sullivan's room was spacious. Pink wallpaper covered the walls, a wool rug lay on the smooth birch floor, and a neat row of plush toys sat on the bed. It had a very feminine touch. Of course, there was also a computer. It was new, replaced just last month, a gift her father bought her while on a business trip. Olivia Sullivan dropped her backpack and flopped onto the bed, burying her face in the soft quilt, not wanting to move an inch. But as soon as she closed her eyes, a boy's handsome face filled her mind, Michael Thompson. Before today, Olivia Sullivan and Michael Thompson hadn't had much interaction, even though they had been classmates for over 2 years. But what happened today was something she couldn't get off her mind. Why? Why could she suddenly hear Michael Thompson's thoughts? And was he really her future? Impossible, 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 impossible. Olivia Sullivan shuddered, muttering the word repeatedly. Yet, she couldn't help but wonder. If this Michael Thompson from the future had nothing to do with her, how did he know so much about her? He clearly remembered her menstrual cycle and knew she felt particularly unwell during that time. He knew about her secret stash of money, even roughly how much was in it, something only she and her mother knew, not even her father. And he spoke so seriously about the names of their future children. None of it sounded made up, but he said he would take me away from this family. Olivia Sullivan hugged her quilt, whispering the words softly to herself, her gaze becoming distant as she drifted off in thought. After a while, she seemed to snap back to reality. Thinking about what she'd just said, a wave of shyness and embarrassment washed over her. Her face turned red, bit by bit. Even the tips of her ears felt hot. She buried her head under the quilt, letting out a muffled mmph sound. Today, she must have had a fever. Her brain must be fried. Just supposing, if Michael Thompson's thoughts weren't my imagination, and he wasn't lying, then Grandpa really will be in trouble tomorrow. Olivia Sullivan decided she had to stay home tomorrow no matter what, to look after her grandfather. If what Michael said happened tomorrow, it would prove that hearing his thoughts wasn't just her imagination, and that Michael wasn't lying. Of course, the main reason was that she didn't want anything to happen to her grandfather. He was the only one in the family who was genuinely good to her. Olivia Sullivan's thoughts grew heavy. She took a deep breath to calm herself, then got off the bed and walked towards the computer desk. Sitting down, she turned on the computer, her first action to expertly log into Messenger. Just as Olivia was about to open a web browser, her Messenger icon started bouncing. Someone had sent her a message. Who is this? Olivia Sullivan frowned slightly, looking at the ID. Babe, I got in 4-drip today. She didn't remember adding a friend with such an ID. However, besides family, her friend list only contained classmates. She hadn't added any strangers. So, she clicked open the chat window. Hey Olivia Sullivan, are you free tomorrow afternoon? Let's meet up, okay? I have something really important to discuss with you. Olivia Sullivan stared at the sender's profile picture for a long moment, then suddenly remembered. It was Michael Thompson. Why was he asking her out? That tone, that suggestive wording. Olivia recalled the thoughts she'd heard from Michael during the day. Is he going to confess? She stared wide-eyed at the computer screen for a long moment, her face gradually turning pink. She felt a sudden, unexpected nervousness. 2 p.m. tomorrow, pavilion in the park outside your place. See you there. Olivia Sullivan looked at the message Michael had sent, hesitated for a long moment, then finally replied. What's it about? But she waited for a while without a response. Looking again, his profile picture had grayed out, showing he was offline. That guy. Olivia puffed out her cheeks angrily. But thinking about tomorrow, her eyebrows practically knitted together in worry. Should she go meet him? Olivia kind of wanted to see Michael Thompson, but she was also worried about what she would do if he really confessed his feelings to her. Reject him, definitely reject him. She wasn't that kind of easy girl. After wrestling with the decision, Olivia Sullivan clenched her small fists, making up her mind. She sat at the computer desk, troubled. When she came back to herself, she realized her mind was completely filled with thoughts of Michael Thompson. She'd been agonizing over it for almost half an hour. But a knock on the door pulled her back to reality. The blush gradually faded from her cheeks. Olivia sighed softly, knowing it was someone from the family telling her to come downstairs for dinner. Time for the part of the day she disliked the most. Ow, hurts. Aunt Maggie, let go. Fatty, is that what you call me? You disrespectful brat. Margaret Thompson scowled, grabbed Michael Thompson by the ear, hauled him up from the computer desk, and scolded. The minute you get back, you run over to your uncle's place to play on the computer. Did you write that apology letter your teacher assigned? Did you do your homework? Finals are almost here. Have you even started studying? Tomorrow's the weekend. No rush. Enough excuses. Get downstairs for dinner right now. Or you can eat with Buddy. Buddy was the family dog, nothing fancy. Technically a Chinese rural dog, but mostly just called Mutt. After all, in a small place like Pine Creek Town, which wasn't much different from the countryside, keeping a dog for guarding the house was perfectly normal. With his ear still firmly held, Michael Thompson had no choice but to log out of his messenger and follow Margaret Thompson. Before he left, he saw that little brat, Emily Thompson, holding their younger cousin. Not only had she done nothing to help him, but she was now holding up the baby cousin's hand, waving it at him. Grinning, she drawled in a mock formal tone, "Valued customer, please come again." The little cousin piped up in her baby voice, "Please come again." Michael Thompson secretly flipped her off, but Margaret Thompson saw the move. The hand gripping his ear gave it a sharp twist, and with a yelp, he stumbled out of his uncle's house, crying "Ow." Downstairs, his dad, Robert Thompson, was holding a small cup of white liquor, humming a little tune to himself. In front of him were just 2 small dishes, a plate of peanuts and some smashed cucumber salad. Michael Thompson saw this and immediately protested. "Dad, what's wrong with you? Your wife Margaret Thompson is treating us like rabbits, not letting us have any meat. Can't you get her under control?" Slightly tipsy, Robert Thompson squinted at his son. "Don't talk to me. That woman only cares about her precious son, doesn't give a damn about her husband. Michael Thompson. Just then, Margaret Thompson emerged from the kitchen carrying a bowl, scolding as she walked to the table. Eat, eat, eat. Is that all you think about? Such ambition. Still asking for meat? Why don't you go to the pig farm and bite a chunk out of pig's backside? That'd be fresh. How about I give you a smack instead? You want that? Despite her ranting, she placed the bowl she was carrying onto the table. In the bowl, glistening with oil on a soy sauce broth, were 7 or 8 small chicken drumettes and several large, thin slices of pork belly. It was Michael Thompson's favorite dish from childhood. His mother would wash the chicken drumettes and pork belly, put them in a small bowl with some cooking wine and soy sauce for seasoning, and simply place the bowl in the rice cooker while the rice steamed. When the rice was done, the bowl would be lifted out, releasing an incredible aroma. The pork belly melted in your mouth, and the chicken was so tender it fell right off the bone. Seeing the bowl of meat, Michael Thompson's eyes instantly welled up. He hadn't eaten his mom's special chicken and pork belly since he'd left for college. Robert Thompson had been sitting there drinking for ages, but Margaret Thompson hadn't brought out this particular dish. It was obvious who she'd been saving it for. No wonder his dad was complaining. I'll get the rice. Afraid his parents would see his reaction and feeling embarrassed, Michael Thompson quickly got up and went into the kitchen. When he came back out carrying bowls of rice, he stopped in shock. Several of his younger cousins were sprawled in the chairs, each greedily munching on a chicken drumette. He looked back at the serving bowl. Nothing was left but a few slices of the fatty pork belly. Michael Thompson flared up. Hey, what do you think you're doing? My mom made that for me. As he rushed over, the cousins giggled and scattered. His third uncle's youngest boy held up his drumette triumphantly and yelled, Aunt Maggie said not to save any for you. She said we should eat it all. Michael Thompson whipped his head around to face Margaret Thompson. Mom! Margaret Thompson was holding his little baby cousin, wiping her nose. Didn't I leave you a couple of slices? There's still broth left. Just pour it over your rice. Michael Thompson. Damn it. So much for feeling touched. Meanwhile, at the Sullivan residence, the Sullivan family was also gathered for dinner, the large group filling the long table. It was a long table, laden with a sumptuous spread of chicken, duck, fish, and other meats. However, the atmosphere at the table was subdued, filled only with the sounds of slow chewing and the occasional clink of cutlery against plates. Occasionally, a parent might begin to scold a picky child, but a sharp cough from the head of the table would quickly cut them off, making them shut their mouths resentfully. The cough came from the family patriarch, the head of the Sullivan clan, Arthur Sullivan. Olivia Sullivan sat among them, her posture perfect, delicately picking at her rice with chopsticks, taking tiny bites. Across from her sat her mother and her aunt, the same two women who had been practically at each other's throats just moments earlier. Though they'd looked ready to tear each other's hair out moments ago, they now sat eating as if nothing were amiss, occasionally even pouring wine for one another, projecting an image of perfect harmony between sisters-in-law. They hadn't forgotten their argument. They simply didn't dare let it show in front of the patriarch. The family's men were all dressed formally in suits. Phones buzzed intermittently. Some men glanced at their screens before switching them off, their faces impassive. Others frowned, excused themselves, and stepped outside to take the call. It was a grand dinner, yet the atmosphere felt stiflingly somber. At the head of the table, Arthur Sullivan held his chopsticks poised over the feast of delicacies, but seemed hesitant to begin eating. He looked out at his full house of descendants, but felt a distinct lack of satisfaction. Throughout Green Valley, the Sullivan family was, without question, the wealthiest, and the family's fortune had begun with the current patriarch, Arthur Sullivan himself. Tracing Arthur Sullivan's lineage back, his ancestors, all the way to the late Qing dynasty, were simple farmers. His own family wasn't wealthy when he was young. There were 3 brothers and 2 sisters. 2 of his brothers died young, and both sisters were given away to other families to raise. Only he, the youngest, and his eldest brother remained, a stark testament to the family's poverty. But Arthur Sullivan wasn't content with that life. He soon put down his farming tools and started looking for other ways to make a living. Initially, he became a dowyi, a speculative trader, hopping freight trains, taking goods from the south to sell up north, and bringing northern specialties back down south. Back in the 1960s, this was considered speculation and profiteering, and it was illegal. But Arthur Sullivan wasn't afraid of prison. He was afraid of being poor. He was terrified his own children might die from illness because he lacked money for medicine, like his lost brothers, or that he might have to give away his daughters because he couldn't feed them, like his sisters. He worked as a trader for 7 or 8 years. Just as everyone else was jumping into that game, he quit and returned to his hometown to start dealing in small consumer goods. His home region was poor in those days. Because of the terrain, there was very little land suitable for farming. So many locals had secretly emigrated abroad to find work. Arthur Sullivan, however, stayed behind and arguably did a good thing. He organized the remaining townspeople, setting up small workshops to produce toys, clothes, and various everyday items. Leveraging the network he'd built during his years as a trader, he wholesaled these products to other merchants, generating substantial income for a time. Later, the Sullivan business expanded steadily. Benefiting from their location near Newport Coast, they began exporting their goods. Almost imperceptibly, the once penniless young man had built a commercial empire from nothing. But success in business did not necessarily mean success at home. Even heroes face their twilight years. Arthur Sullivan was already nearly 70. Perhaps because he'd pushed himself too hard when he was younger. Now that he was old, all sorts of health problems were surfacing. A few days ago, the doctor had found something wrong with his heart and said he needed to be hospitalized for observation. Arthur Sullivan hadn't listened. He hated hospitals. The moment he stepped inside, seeing the stark white walls and smelling the sharp scent of disinfectant, he always felt like his days were numbered. The Sullivan family dinner didn't end until 7. The children had already left the table, but the adults lingered, chatting with wine glasses in hand. It was a Sullivan family rule, no talking during meals. So, while everyone had eaten in silence, conversation flowed freely now that the meal was over. "Dad, I heard you went to the hospital a couple of days ago. Is everything all right?" His second son's wife eagerly poured him a glass of wine, asking with a solicitous smile. Arthur Sullivan said flatly, "It's nothing serious. The doctor just told me to drink less." His daughter-in-law's smile froze. She awkwardly held the wine bottle, unsure whether to pour more or put it down, finally setting it aside with a sheepish laugh. Just then, the third son's wife gave her own son, who had just finished college, a meaningful look. He immediately understood and stood up, smiling. "Grandpa, I'll be graduating next year. For my internship this year, I was hoping I could help out with the family business." The third son's wife quickly added, "Yes, Dad. Our son isn't a kid anymore. Isn't it time he was given a shop to manage? Just to let him gain some experience." The second son's wife scoffed audibly. "Do technical college students even need internships?" The third son's wife immediately bristled. "Second sister-in-law, how can you say that? Isn't technical college still college? He's your nephew too. If you want to help him, fine, but why make sarcastic remarks?" The tension was palpable. Meanwhile, the second and third sons ignored their wives' argument, absorbed in their own conversation about business. "How's the shop in the old district? What can you do? There's hardly any foot traffic. It's basically a warehouse. I'm planning to sell it off soon. Already talking to potential buyers." "You got it good, second brother. Dad gave your family all the shops on Long Street to manage." "Huh, it's just business as usual." Listening to his family members chat, each with their own hidden agendas, Arthur Sullivan felt incredibly irritated. Everything they said, directly or indirectly, revolved around money. Especially since his health had been declining over the past couple of years, these vultures were like flies drawn to rotting meat, afraid they'd arrive too late to get their share. They'd show up at the old house for dinner every few days, the whole clan. Wonderful, truly wonderful. So filial. Arthur Sullivan understood, but he didn't want to. His gaze soon fell on a girl sitting at the corner of the table, and his expression softened considerably. He asked gently, "Olivia Sullivan, you're a junior in high school now, aren't you? How are your grades?" Olivia Sullivan had been sitting silently, not wanting to stay after dinner watching the adults scheme and bicker. It was pure torture for her. Besides, she was on her period today, and her stomach really hurt. But she couldn't leave. Her mother had explicitly told her to stay with her grandfather and not leave his side. When she was suddenly addressed, she didn't react at first, until her mother gently kicked her under the table and shot her a displeased look. Olivia Sullivan finally snapped back. "They're good, Grandpa." Olivia Sullivan's mother chimed in enthusiastically. "Dad, you won't believe it. Olivia was first in her class on the last monthly exam. If she keeps this up, maybe next year's valedictorian at Green Valley High could come from our family." Arthur Sullivan said with satisfaction, "That's good. That's very good." Ever since she was little, Olivia Sullivan had been Arthur Sullivan's favorite granddaughter. There were many grandchildren, but while one or two were cute as children, they all became rebellious as they grew older. None of them excelled academically, but they were masters at causing trouble. Arthur Sullivan often reflected, wondering if he had focused too much on making money in his early years and neglected his children's upbringing, and now the younger generation, raised by those same children, were turning out similarly. But his second son's daughter was different. She had been adorable since she was a child, like a little porcelain doll, and grew up to be quiet and sensible. Her grades were good, she never caused trouble, and she was the only one in the family with a real chance of getting into a top university. Naturally, the old man held her in high regard. Olivia Sullivan looked at the old man, a complicated feeling stirring within her. Grandpa, will he really have a sudden heart attack tomorrow? She still couldn't quite believe the thoughts she'd overheard from Michael Thompson, just like she couldn't believe Michael Thompson was her future husband. Or rather, she didn't want to believe it. But what if? Whether it's true or not, I have to be by Grandpa's side tomorrow. Olivia Sullivan clenched her small fists, making a silent resolve. Later that evening, Michael Thompson was sitting in the first-floor living room, watching TV. Although right now, only boring commercials were playing. Michael Thompson didn't change the channel. His mind wasn't on the television. He was seriously contemplating something perhaps insignificant, yet potentially life-altering. He wanted to give up the regular college entrance exam and take the art school entrance exam instead. Michael Thompson could imagine how strongly his parents would object if he told them. Even his various aunts and uncles, like Aunt Maggie, would likely take turns trying to change his mind. Because Michael Thompson's academic performance was excellent. While getting into an Ivy League university might be a stretch, acceptance into a good university was practically guaranteed. With a bit more effort, even Yangzhou University, ranked third in the country, was within reach. The Thompson family's biggest regret was never having produced a scholar. The average education level in the Thompson family was junior high. Michael Thompson would be the first Thompson to go to university. If he could get into a prestigious university, it would be a tremendous honor for the family. Family honor. At this crucial juncture, for Michael Thompson to suddenly say he wasn't taking the regular exam and wanted to pursue the arts exam instead, one could only imagine the family's opposition. It wasn't that the Thompsons had anything against the arts exam itself, but in the perception of most people in Pine Ridge County, the arts track was a path for students with poor grades who still wanted to get into university. Even the teachers at school thought this way. They would try to persuade students with lower grades, who weren't guaranteed a spot in an undergraduate program, to take the arts exam, thus ensuring the school's university acceptance rate. Conversely, among the high-achieving students, historically, none had ever opted for the arts exam, at least not at Oakwood High School. But Michael Thompson had made up his mind. He was going for the arts exam. Before his rebirth, Michael Thompson had performed poorly on the Gaokao. He hadn't even come close to his unspoken goal of Yangzhou University, let alone getting into any of the universities he'd aimed for, and ended up in a regular university. And because his score had barely scraped past the admission cutoff, he was assigned to a major notorious for being in the top 10 hardest majors for employment nationwide. It was the kind of major where you had no prospects without pursuing graduate studies, a field with a supposed future, but no present, where bachelor's degree graduates from regular universities earned less than those with associate's degrees. However, that university and major did have one advantage: free time. This gave him enough time and energy to work on his own ventures. And that was the beginning of Michael Thompson's journey to wealth. Perhaps due to his family background, Michael Thompson had a natural talent for painting, and he was also hardworking and eager to learn. By his sophomore year of college, he was already skilled enough to take commissions online from game companies and private clients, earning some spending money. In the second half of his sophomore year, thanks to his youngest uncle, he started an eBay store for clothing, taught himself fashion design, and even launched his own brand. The eBay store took off immediately. His brand gained recognition. The business grew larger and larger, and soon he opened brick-and-mortar boutiques of various sizes. Later, he expanded into high-end luxury goods, focusing on apparel and jewelry. The products he personally designed became famous both at home and abroad. He was the businessman with the keenest eye for art, and the artist with the sharpest mind for business. Now, reborn in this life, he didn't want to chase money just for the sake of it. He wanted to do something purely for himself, something he truly loved. That's why he decided to take the art school entrance exams, to study what he genuinely wanted to learn, to actually gain knowledge in college instead of just coasting by for a bachelor's degree and diploma. Just as Michael Thompson made up his mind, a mechanical voice suddenly echoed in his ears. Host wish detected. System properties altering. Rebooting. System reboot successful. System initializing. Initialization complete. Successfully bound to host. Host information compiling. Compilation complete. Welcome to the Extraordinary Artist System V1. 0. This is a brand new version you ain't never played before. Just try it for 3 minutes, and you'll fall in love with this system, just like me. The expression on Michael Thompson's face froze. He thought he must be hearing things. It had started as a cool, synthesized electronic voice, but what the hell was with that sudden switch to a cheesy game ad voice? At the same time, Michael Thompson noticed the system loading. Text in the upper right corner of his vision disappeared. In its place was a small button. After focusing his gaze on the button for just a moment, a virtual screen appeared before Michael Thompson's eyes. Host, Michael Thompson. Age, 17. Skills, appraisal. Allows you to obtain partial information about items. Dexterous hands. Your hands are exceptionally nimble, capable of fine work beyond ordinary people. Stability. Your muscles are unique and do not tremble from fatigue or soreness. Title, none. Title bonus, none. Achievements, none. Learning progress, none yet. This system is pretty simple, but what does it actually do? Michael Thompson mulled it over for a long time, but couldn't figure it out. He did, however, experiment with the 3 skills he possessed. He found that the latter 2 seemed to be passive skills that couldn't be activated manually, while the first one, appraisal, could be. When he tried activating the first skill, his gaze fell upon the main gate. A somewhat old wooden gate. Michael Thompson stared intently, and the information in the pop-up box before his eyes gradually changed, becoming more detailed. A 38-year-old wooden gate made of pine, 7 feet high, 3 feet wide. Wait. Before Michael Thompson could read all the information, his eyes began to sting and water uncontrollably. He lowered his head and rubbed his eyes. When he opened them again, the item information box was gone from his vision. While Michael Thompson was still dazed, a little boy about 7 or 8 years old with a bowl cut ran in excitedly, clutching a smoldering stick. He yelled to Michael Thompson, "Big bro, come warm up by the fire." Michael Thompson felt a sense of relief and stood up with a smile. "Okay, coming." Every year when the weather turned cold, the Thompson family loved gathering in the yard to warm themselves by the fire. The adults would circle the brazier, eating edamame, drinking bourbon, and chatting about everyday things. Emily Thompson was leading her younger siblings and poking around in the brazier, tossing in sweet potatoes and chestnuts to roast. His little cousin, his second uncle's daughter, had picked a stick with glowing embers from the brazier and was running back and forth across the yard, waving it around with happy shouts. "Playing with fire means you'll wet the bed tonight," his aunt teased. The little girl immediately ran over, grabbed Michael Thompson's leg, and said in a tiny voice, "Then I'll sleep with Big Bro." "So you want my bed, huh? You really are your big brother's little sweetheart." Michael Thompson bent down and playfully pinched his cousin's chubby cheek. He was holding a chicken leg he'd just taken down from the bamboo pole in the yard. He called out, "All right, kids, who wants a roasted chicken leg?" Me. His younger cousins from his third uncle's family were the most enthusiastic, raising their hands and shouting happily. "That smoked meat hasn't even been drying for 2 days, and you're already wasting it. We're saving that for Christmas." Margaret Thompson scolded Michael Thompson. He just grinned sheepishly without replying, skewering the chicken leg onto a stick. Christmas was next month, and the Thompson family had started air-drying their smoked meats early: chicken legs, ducks, pork belly, and the like. After being cured and dried for a few days, they were stored in the freezer, enough to last well into the new year. This was something Michael Thompson ate every year. But the thing the Thompson kids looked forward to most during the holidays was the roasted turkey. They'd start curing it a month before the holidays. Come a day of the big holiday feast, they'd share some with the church first, then bring the rest home to cook. Once it was ready, they'd set up a table in the yard and place the turkey on it. A small knife will be placed beside it, and anyone who wanted some could just carve off a few slices and eat it right there with their hands. Pure bliss. Honestly, the taste might not have compared to the exotic delicacies he'd eaten later in life, but the joyful atmosphere of the whole family sharing the meal together cemented that flavor in his memory forever. Michael Thompson savored this feeling. Heaven had given him a second chance, and surely it wasn't just so he could add a few more zeros to his bank account. As he roasted the chicken leg, 2 little boys squatted by the brazier next to him, their eyes glued to the meat, practically drooling. Suddenly, Michael Thompson noticed his youngest uncle exchanging meaningful glances with his second uncle. He knew that the big event that would change the family's destiny was probably about to happen. Before Michael Thompson went to college, 2 major events occurred that would shape the Thompson family's destiny. These 2 events were also causally linked. Thinking back, the Thompson family's first crisis was about to happen soon. Before his rebirth, during his senior year of high school, his uncle Ben Thompson had secretly taken a large sum of money behind his wife's back and poured it into the stock market. He caught the bull market and made a killing. Originally in the wholesale clothing business, he now had so much money he was planning to build his own clothing factory in the neighboring city. Later, He even roped his second uncle into it, and his eldest uncle invested a bit too. The final outcome was predictable. At the end of January 2008, the global stock market crashed. The 21st was dubbed Black Monday as the entire market began to collapse, plummeting dramatically. His uncles ended up deep in debt. The eldest uncle was luckier, only losing some money. His second uncle had to sell his house in the city. And Uncle Ben Thompson, who had invested the most, would have had to mortgage the clothing factory if his brothers hadn't helped out. The whole family might have ended up homeless. Only Michael Thompson's father, Robert Thompson, remained steadfastly uninvolved. It wasn't that Robert Thompson didn't want to make money. It was mainly that the family finances weren't his to manage. Margaret Thompson, his wife, had the typical mindset of a cautious rural woman, content with modest security. She never trusted things like stocks, always feeling they were too intangible and risky. Michael knew that before he was even born, Margaret didn't even trust banks, secretly hiding any money they earned in cracks in the wall until rats chewed up several thousand yuan. Only then did she learn to deposit it in a bank. This was also a major reason the Thompson family later missed a significant opportunity to get rich, because their capital had been used up. Now that he was reborn, Michael naturally couldn't just stand by and watch his uncles walk into this disaster. Although his uncles treated him like their own kid, if he tried to persuade Uncle Ben to pull out now, with the stock market booming, Uncle Ben definitely wouldn't listen. Michael thought for a moment and came up with an idea. He shuffled over to a woman holding a child, lowered his voice, and said conspiratorially, "Auntie, let me tell you something." That night, Michael Thompson was sleeping soundly in his room when he was suddenly awakened by a loud crash from upstairs. He pricked up his ears and faintly heard his aunt yelling, "Ben, you tell me straight. Where did the family money go? Did you gamble it away?" "Ouch. No, really no. How could I gamble it away? I used it for business, that shipment for the factory." "Cut the crap. Who keeps the factory books, don't you know? Are you going to tell me the truth or not? Do you even want this marriage to work? Honey, hey, let's talk calmly, don't get physical." Michael listened long enough to enjoy the commotion, chuckled softly, rolled over in bed, closed his eyes, and went back to sleep. Judging by how thoroughly his aunt had Uncle Ben wrapped around her finger, he figured Uncle Ben would confess soon enough. His aunt was a typical rural woman who hadn't had much schooling. She had no concept of what the stock market even was. As long as Michael made her see that stocks were basically the same as gambling, she'd have plenty of ways to handle Uncle Ben. Tomorrow, he'd go over and fan the flames a bit more, maybe make up a few stories about people going bankrupt and jumping off buildings because of the stock market, and that would settle the matter. As for the other two uncles, he didn't need to worry. The women in the Thompson family always kept each other informed. The next day, Saturday, Michael Thompson slept comfortably until past 10, only getting up to wash after Margaret Thompson dragged him out of bed by the ear. He cleaned himself up nicely today. Although still a bit boyish, he was quite good looking. After getting ready, Michael saw Margaret Thompson mopping the living room floor. He hesitated, deciding not to reveal his decision to apply to art school just yet, because today he also had to meet Olivia Sullivan, and if he broke the news now, he wouldn't be allowed out of the house today. Michael decided to see Olivia Sullivan first and deal with his parents when he got back. He went out into the yard and slipped over to Robert Thompson's side. "Dad, your buddy here's in a bit of jam. Help me out." Robert Thompson was sitting on a small stool in the yard, mending a fishing net. He turned his head and saw his son holding his right thumb and index finger together with a rubber band. "What's this?" "Short on cash." "Go ask your mom. Why are you always trying to fleece me? Don't you know who handles the money in this house?" Michael protested, "Dad, that's not right. Just yesterday you said you'd provide financial support for me." Robert tapped him on the head. "Stop messing around. What do you need money for? Gonna bring me back a pretty daughter-in-law. Wow, you psychic or something?" Michael slicked back his hair, raised an eyebrow, and gave a cocky look. "Don't you think your son looks extra handsome today? Won't girls be chasing me down the street?" "How much do you need?" Robert decided to pay for some peace and quiet. "Look, thousands wouldn't be too much, and hundreds wouldn't be too little. Just give whatever you think is right. It's about our bond, you know? You wouldn't want to seem cheap." Michael waved his hand nonchalantly, but his eyes were glued to Robert slowly reaching for his wallet. Finally, Robert pulled a single $100 bill from his wallet. "Just 100. TSK. Our bond is only worth $100. Take it or leave it." No, 100's fine, 100's fine." Michael quickly snatched the bill and happily stuffed it into his pocket. He stood up and said to Robert, "Dad, tell Mom I won't be home for lunch. I'm heading out. Oh, and this." Michael pulled out a stack of masks he'd prepared earlier from his pocket. "Take these. You need to wear them when you're working from now on, understand? Breathing in all that stone dust isn't good for you. It just builds up in your lungs. And cut back on the smoking, too. I hear you coughing every single morning. You nag worse than your mother. I'm being serious. Don't joke around. Michael shoved the masks into Robert's hand without waiting for an argument. I've had more schooling than you, so you have to listen to me on this, okay? Robert was both annoyed and amused, but he knew his son was worried about his health, so he took the masks. All right, I get it. Take it seriously. Okay, I'm leaving. Cover for me with Mom. Michael started walking towards the yard gate, looking back every few steps. You really need to take it seriously. Get out of here. Only when Robert lifted the small stool threateningly did Michael finally dash off. Inside the Sullivan family study, Arthur Sullivan stood at his desk, practicing calligraphy with a brush pen. After completing the last stroke, he straightened up, looked at the characters on the rice paper, and nodded in satisfaction. He hadn't had much schooling in his youth, not even finishing elementary school. Though he'd later made his fortune, a nagging sense of inadequacy about his lack of education always lingered. It seemed the less one had of something, the more it mattered. So, in recent years, having entrusted the family business to others and with free time on his hands, Arthur enjoyed dabbling in refined pursuits. Tea ceremonies, calligraphy, Chinese painting. He'd hired private tutors for all of them, paying handsomely, many of whom were professors from Ivy League universities. Having finished his calligraphy practice, Arthur looked at his granddaughter, Olivia Sullivan, sitting on a chair nearby. She seemed restless today, as if she were sitting on pins and needles. Arthur spoke kindly. Olivia, if you're bored, go and amuse yourself. You don't need to spend your time with an old man like me. Olivia snapped back to attention and quickly shook her head. It's fine, Grandpa. She glanced nervously at Arthur. Seeing his rosy complexion and that he seemed well, she breathed a sigh of relief. Grandpa didn't look like he was about to have a heart attack, like Michael Thompson had said. And Grandpa was home. If he were to suddenly have a heart attack, someone in the house, like the housekeeper, would surely notice. How could he possibly die from not receiving immediate medical attention? Olivia was torn. Part of her suspected Michael had tricked her, but the other part was afraid to leave, fearing that as soon as she did, something would happen to her grandfather. She glanced at the time on her iPhone. The time she'd agreed to meet Michael was drawing near. Should she go? Arthur noticed his granddaughter checking her phone and asked with a smile, What's up? Do you have plans this afternoon? And no, nothing much. How many times have you looked at your phone now? My eyes haven't failed me yet. He waved his hand dismissively. If you have something to do, go ahead. Watching an old man write isn't very exciting. Olivia hesitated. She had intended to spend the entire day with her grandfather. But it was Michael who had asked to meet her, and it was through eavesdropping on his thoughts that she'd learned about her grandfather's supposed impending heart attack. If Michael was asking to meet her now, did that mean her grandfather was safe for the time being? Besides, today Michael was supposed to confess his feelings for her. A blush crept onto her cheeks. Arthur, a shrewd old man, took one look at her and guessed what was going on. Which young lad has captured my granddaughter's attention? Grandpa, there's nothing like that. Olivia jumped to her feet, protesting vehemently. Arthur chuckled and waved his hand again. All right, go on. I'm not your parents. I won't pry. Go about your business. Olivia, teased by his words, felt a mix of embarrassment and shyness. Still, she decided she needed to see Michael. At least, she could hear more about her grandfather from his thoughts, like the specific time and place of the supposed heart attack. That was the only reason. She had no other motives whatsoever. It's just a classmate who needs to talk to me about something. Well, Grandpa, I'll be going then. For some reason, she lowered her head as she spoke, a telltale sign of her fibbing. Arthur, recognizing his granddaughter's lifelong habit of looking down when telling a lie, smiled to himself and waved her off. Once Olivia had left the study, Arthur stood by the window, squinting at the beautiful weather outside. Such a lovely day. I think I'll take the dog for a walk, get some exercise. The doctor had advised him against strenuous activity, but a leisurely stroll with the dog hardly qualified. Staying cooped up inside all day was making his old bones stiff. Arthur decided to take advantage of the fine weather and enjoy some fresh air. By the time Michael arrived at the agreed-upon meeting place, it was already past 1 in the afternoon. The Sullivan family lived in Green Valley Southside, a renowned affluent area known for its upscale villas. Even downtown property prices couldn't compete with this exclusive neighborhood. And since the downtown area bordered the older part of the city, many old buildings remained, making it less bustling and modern than the Villa District in the south. However, the city center was quite a distance from the town where Michael lived. It required a bus ride of over an hour, and since the Green Valley subway hadn't opened yet in 2008, he had to transfer to a local bus for a few more stops, making the journey quite time-consuming. So Michael rarely ventured into the city unless it was a weekend trip to the county seat with friends. After arriving, Michael sat in the gazebo, sipping ice cola from a can through a straw. He glanced at his watch. They had agreed to meet at 1:30, and there were still about 15 minutes to go. At times like these, he desperately wished he had an iPhone. At least he could kill time playing games, even with the snail-paced 3G network. He decided that his first purchase after earning some money would be a phone. He didn't have to wait long. Before their agreed-upon time, he heard someone call his name from just outside the gazebo. Michael Thompson. He looked up, bathed in sunlight. A girl in a white dress was walking towards him, hands clasped behind her back. The sunlight illuminated her profile, and even the breeze that ruffled her hair seemed to carry a gentle glow. Olivia reached the gazebo and was surprised to see Michael had arrived early and was already waiting. Had he been looking forward to this as much as she had? A wave of girlish shyness washed over her. She lowered her head bashfully. As she neared the gazebo, Michael's thoughts became clearer. Wow, she actually got all dressed up for this. She must be really excited. Olivia, I wasn't excited. This is just a normal outfit. It's what I wear at home. She's short but really cute. My wife. Who is your wife? Seriously? And stop calling me short. It's just that. She's so flat-chested. Sigh. Guess that won't be changing anytime soon. Olivia clenched her fists so tightly that her knuckles turned white, the veins in her forehead throbbing. She barely managed to restrain herself from punching Michael in the face. Was he really here to confess his feelings? Or was he just trying to annoy her? I'm not angry. I'm not angry. Olivia took a deep breath, whispering reassurances to herself. She composed herself, forcing a smile as she greeted Michael. Michael Thompson, good afternoon. There was still some distance apart, and Michael, lost in his thoughts, hadn't noticed Olivia's greeting. He glanced at Olivia's flat chest, then looked away with a sigh of mild disappointment. Sigh. Olivia, did he just sigh out loud? I'm pretty sure I heard that with my ears. Her hand, frozen midair, clenched into a fist. She quickened her pace toward Michael, with a pounding heart and trembling hand. A perfectly executed straight punch landed squarely on his face. Michael Thompson never dreamed that his first date with Olivia Sullivan after being reborn would kick off in such a dramatic fashion. Oof. He took a punch to the stomach and almost spat out the Coke he was drinking. Olivia Sullivan flushed crimson, her clenched fists trembling, so angry she could barely speak clearly. Where were you looking? Have you no manners? I didn't dress up just to see you. I always dress like this. Isn't this just a normal sundress? Right, totally normal. Michael Thompson didn't know whether to be annoyed or amused. Right, totally normal. Heh, such a classic case of playing hard to get. How'd I never notice Big Beauty had this side to her before? Olivia Sullivan almost lost it. Although she didn't know what playing hard to get really meant, coming from Michael Thompson, she instinctively knew it wasn't anything complimentary. She specifically mentioned her clothes, even though I didn't ask. Is she trying to get my attention, hoping I'll compliment her outfit? Smooth move, Big Beauty. Nice try covering it up. Makes it pretty obvious. Olivia Sullivan. She really hadn't meant it like that. So infuriating, truly infuriating. But she couldn't even get properly angry about this, because she couldn't explain to Michael Thompson that she'd only said that because she'd heard his inner thoughts. And could he please stop calling her Big Beauty? When did she get that nickname? Although when she first heard it in his thoughts yesterday, she had been a tiny bit happy. But hearing it over and over was really embarrassing, the kind that made her feel both mortified and annoyed. She was angry now, the kind of angry that couldn't be coaxed away. Olivia Sullivan decided to drop the subject, moving to the other side of the gazebo and asking irritably, So, why did you ask me here today? She decided then and there. When Michael Thompson confessed his feelings later, she would reject him harshly, absolutely ruthlessly. But Michael Thompson calmly reached for the backpack he brought, unzipping it. Olivia Sullivan couldn't help but glance over. Was this a carefully prepared gift? Maybe even a love letter. He did put in some effort, but if he thought that was enough to make her say yes, he was incredibly naive. Olivia Sullivan's mind was already spinning wild scenarios, but when she saw what Michael Thompson pulled out of his bag, she suddenly realized she was the naive one. Michael Thompson took out a set of test papers. He looked a little embarrassed. Olivia Sullivan, you got first place in our class on the last monthly exam, right? There are a few questions I don't get. Could you help me out? Olivia Sullivan's face flushed red, then pale. It was quite a sight. I psyched myself up for all that, and this is what you show me? Let me see. Refusing to believe it, she snatched the papers from Michael Thompson's hand and flipped rapidly through them. Language arts, math, English, physics, chemistry. Nothing. Nowhere. Not a single love letter tucked between the pages. This guy really, truly, honestly came here to ask about homework. Olivia Sullivan felt like she was going crazy inside. Just then, she noticed Michael Thompson looking at her strangely. Why is Big Beauty acting so weird today? Kinda scary. I get it. It must be her time of the month. Olivia Sullivan desperately wanted to say that while yes, it was her time of the month, didn't he have any damn clue who the real culprit was for her current frantic, furious state? And why was a grown man like him so fixated on her period anyway? Michael Thompson reminded her, I haven't shown you which questions I need help with yet. Sorry, I have something to do this afternoon. Her expression darkened. Olivia Sullivan put down the papers and stood up to leave. But just as she turned, her wrist was suddenly caught. Wait, don't go. Olivia Sullivan instinctively looked back to see Michael Thompson's anxious face as he gently held her wrist, seemingly unwilling to let her leave. Can't let Big Beauty leave now, or the rest of my plan will be ruined. Right on cue, Michael Thompson's thoughts echoed again in Olivia Sullivan's mind, the underlying anxiety unmistakable. What? So there was another part to his plan? Somehow, Olivia Sullivan felt a wave of relief wash over her. Her gloomy mood brightened considerably. Humph, talk about trying to cover things up. Look who's playing hard to get now. Oh, all right, Olivia Sullivan said, feigning reluctance as she sat back down with the papers. I only have a little time. Mark the ones you wanted to explain. Okay. And so, they actually spent the afternoon in the gazebo working on test papers. Michael Thompson wasn't a bad student, and he hadn't missed too many questions on the last exam. Olivia Sullivan was quickly getting through the few problems he'd prepared. Around this time, Olivia Sullivan noticed Michael Thompson deliberately slowing her down, even pretending not to hear her sometimes, making her repeat explanations. Normally, something as boring as doing homework, especially in a gazebo without even a proper table, would have made Olivia Sullivan restless. But listening to Michael Thompson's inner thoughts kept her entertained. Weird. Isn't it time? Why aren't they here yet? Did I get the date wrong? No way. Olivia Sullivan could hear the growing anxiety in Michael Thompson's thoughts. His attention wasn't on the problems she was explaining anymore. His eyes kept darting, intentionally or not, towards the area outside the gazebo. It was like he was waiting for someone. This made her curious about what kind of surprise Michael Thompson had prepared for her. Was it something like those proposals in 4 movies, with a flash mob performance? Or maybe he'd arranged for a little kid to run over with a flower, saying in a cute, childish voice, "The big brother over there asked me to give this to you." A young girl's fantasies are always filled with romance. Meanwhile, Arthur Sullivan was walking Buddy into the park. It was a large park, well-landscaped, with a dedicated hiking trail for local residents to exercise and run. Arthur Sullivan led Buddy to the side, tied the leash to a nearby lamppost, and sat down on a bench. He fumbled in his jacket pocket for a moment and pulled out a pack of cigarettes. At home, because of his health, someone always nagged him if he tried to smoke. It annoyed Arthur Sullivan to no end, so he took the opportunity during his walk with the dog to sneak a couple of puffs. Just as he put a cigarette to his lips and reached for his lighter, his eyes caught sight of his dog, tied to the lamppost, somehow managing to undo the clasp on its leash. Buddy then bolted off. Arthur Sullivan startled, forgetting the cigarette entirely, and jumped up to chase him. Buddy. He'd had the dog for nearly 10 years. He was very attached, but his old legs were no match for 4 scrambling paws. Before he'd run even 100 yards, Arthur Sullivan suddenly felt breathless. He clutched his chest, crouching down, his face contorted in pain. Beads of sweat instantly popped out on his forehead. A sharp, twisting pain shot through his chest, accompanied by short, gasping breaths and low groans. His vision began to darken. Finally, his consciousness blurred, and he collapsed heavily onto the ground. For this problem, you draw an auxiliary line here. Michael Thompson, are you even listening? Oh, yeah, I'm listening. Michael Thompson replied distractedly, leaning and pretending to focus on the formulas Olivia Sullivan had scribbled on her scratch paper to solve the problem. But his eyes kept drifting, almost subconsciously, towards the area outside the pavilion. The reason he'd asked Olivia Sullivan out at this specific time, and chosen the park near her house, was because Arthur Sullivan was supposed to have a heart attack today around 2 or 3 in the afternoon, right near this park pavilion. Michael Thompson remembered it so clearly because, before his rebirth, Olivia Sullivan had never gotten over Arthur Sullivan's death from that heart attack. She had been home that day and often lamented to her husband, Michael Thompson, murmuring wistfully, "If only I had gone out with Grandpa to walk Buddy that day." Over time, Michael had memorized the approximate time and place Arthur had collapsed. He hadn't told her directly yesterday on Messenger because he worried that, given their current relationship, she wouldn't believe him. She might even think he was playing a cruel prank. And even if she did believe him, explaining how he knew about it in advance would be incredibly complicated. So, Michael Thompson had simply asked Olivia out, planning to play the part of a helpful bystander who just happened to be passing by when he helped Olivia save her grandfather. But now it was almost 3 o'clock, and there was still no sign of Arthur Sullivan collapsing. Michael Thompson started to worry he'd gotten the time wrong, or maybe misremembered the exact spot. After all, Olivia had only ever said it was near the park pavilion outside her house. This park was actually quite large. You couldn't see the whole thing from the pavilion. If Arthur Sullivan collapsed somewhere out of sight, they'd be screwed. He was getting antsy and wanted to find an excuse to stroll around the park with Olivia. Where's the old man already? If I asked Gorgeous to walk around the park, would she say yes? Hearing Michael Thompson's thoughts, Olivia Sullivan wondered who this old man he was thinking about was. Was it someone helping him to set up a surprise? Maybe the old security guard at the community gate? And how do you know I wouldn't agree if you don't even ask? Better not. We're not that close right now. Don't want her thinking I'm being too forward. Just ask already. Olivia Sullivan wanted to shout. She was eagerly waiting for Michael Thompson's confession so she could launch her counterattack. But the guy was just dragging his feet, stringing her along like this. Ugh. She couldn't take it anymore. She was starting to lose her temper. Wait, acting like this. Doesn't it make it seem like I'm actually looking forward to Michael Thompson's confession? Olivia Sullivan suddenly realized. Her face flushed red, and she ducked her head, nearly burying her face in the papers. She stole a quick glance at Michael Thompson, but his mind was clearly elsewhere, and he hadn't noticed. She breathed a sigh of relief. Just then, a furry black shadow burst into the pavilion from outside, lunging straight for Olivia Sullivan. Michael Thompson jumped. Whoa, what the heck? He looked closer. It was a large wolf dog. Despite the dog's intimidating size, Olivia Sullivan wasn't scared at all. Instead, she happily stroked the fur under its neck. Buddy, what are you doing here? Woof woof whine. The wolf dog was energetic, placing its paws on Olivia Sullivan's legs, as if asking to be held. Michael Thompson stared. That damn horn dog? Hell, I haven't even gotten to touch Gorgeous's leg in this life. Olivia Sullivan's hand froze mid-pet. What nonsense is this guy thinking now? Buddy's a girl. Michael Thompson sidled up next to Olivia Sullivan, reaching out to pet the dog's head. Is this your dog? What do you think you're doing with that hand? Get away. Olivia Sullivan irritably slapped away Michael Thompson's hand, which had been aiming for her head, not the dog's. Then, hugging Buddy, she urged, Buddy, he's a bad guy, bite him. Growling, the wolf dog named Buddy played along, baring her teeth playfully at Michael Thompson. He immediately threw his hands up in surrender. Officer, I'm a good citizen. I surrender, don't shoot. Puffed. Olivia Sullivan couldn't help but laugh. Stroking Buddy's fur, she said with a smug little hum, This is my grandpa's dog. Usually, she only likes me and Grandpa. No one else in the family can even touch her. If you bully me, Buddy will definitely bite you. Right. Also, Buddy's a girl. Question mark. Michael Thompson had no idea why she was emphasizing the dog's gender to him. Still, wolf dogs really weren't easy to get close to. His Uncle Ben Thompson had brought one home once, but the thing only recognized one master and was wary of everyone else. Even after nearly a year, it would still snarl and bark aggressively at his aunt, looking like it wanted to bite. With so many kids around, Uncle Ben couldn't risk it, so he eventually gave the dog to a friend who ran a kennel. As Michael Thompson thought about this, he suddenly shot to his feet. Oh crap! Olivia Sullivan jumped, startled. Holding Buddy, she looked up at him bewildered. What are you doing? You said this dog only likes you and your grandpa. Why yes. Why are you being so intense? Olivia Sullivan was intimidated by Michael Thompson's serious expression. His face darkened, and he bolted out of the pavilion. Woman, can't you grasp the important point? Where are you going? Olivia Sullivan was baffled for a second, but then it hit her. Buddy only liked her and her grandpa, and was usually kept in the yard's doghouse. If Buddy was here in the park, did that mean Grandpa came to walk her? Then where was Grandpa? Recalling Michael Thompson's thoughts about her grandpa having a heart attack today, Olivia finally understood why Michael had asked her here. Her face instantly turned deathly pale. She quickly put Buddy down and ran out of the pavilion after him. The south side of Green Valley was a newer district, expanded gradually after the economic reforms. Population density wasn't high here, especially since it was a recently developed area of expensive villas. Ordinary people couldn't afford them, and those who could were mostly busy professionals who weren't home during the day. That's why, even though it was a Saturday afternoon, the park was practically empty. This was also why, in his previous life, Arthur Sullivan had collapsed from his heart attack in the park, but wasn't discovered for a long time, missing the critical window for rescue. This park is huge. Where could the old man have collapsed? Michael Thompson didn't have time to worry about Olivia Sullivan, whom he'd left behind. Right now, a life was on the line. Saving him was the priority. Luckily, he didn't have to search for long before finding Arthur Sullivan collapsed on a hiking trail not far from the pavilion. It made sense he found him quickly. After all, before his rebirth, Olivia had said her grandpa collapsed near the park pavilion. The old man was on the ground, clutching his chest, his body curled up, his face turning ashen. Michael Thompson rushed over, carefully helped the man lie flat on the ground, and immediately began administering first aid. When Olivia Sullivan arrived, the first thing she saw was the old man lying on the ground, with Michael Thompson performing CPR. Grandpa! Her eyes widened, her expression frozen in disbelief. The shock hit her so hard that her vision swam, and she nearly stumbled. Had Grandpa really had a heart attack, just like Michael Thompson said? Had Michael Thompson asked her out today, dragging things out just so he could be here to help Grandpa the moment it happened? So those thoughts of Michael Thompson she'd heard. They weren't just her imagination, they were real. Olivia Sullivan's mind went blank. She could hardly think straight. Until she heard Michael Thompson snapping at her. What are you standing there gawking for? Call a 911. I don't have my phone. Oh, right. As if jolted back to reality, Olivia fumbled for her phone, her hands shaking as she dialed 911. Hello, police? She stammered into the phone. No, wait, it's not for the police. I didn't dial the wrong number. Michael Thompson was speechless. His future wife, is this ditzy? Can he still go through with this? He couldn't worry about Olivia now. After performing first aid on Mr. Sullivan, he patted the man down. Usually, people with heart conditions carried medication with them. Michael searched for a moment and finally found the pills in a pocket. He turned and yelled to Olivia, who was still on the phone. Hey, gorgeous. Go grab my backpack from the gazebo. There's a bottle of water in it. Huh? Oh, okay. Right away. Olivia didn't even register the term of endearment Michael had used. She just nodded quickly and jogged toward the gazebo. When she brought the backpack over, Michael took out the bottled water and helped Mr. Sullivan take his medication. Later, while they waited for the ambulance, Grandpa Sullivan regained consciousness briefly. He didn't seem fully aware, just looked between Michael Thompson and his granddaughter, mumbling a few unintelligible words. Olivia Sullivan called home, and soon enough, a crowd from the Sullivan family arrived. They surrounded Grandpa Sullivan, wailing dramatically as if trying to mourn him before he was even gone. Quite the performance, Michael thought wryly. Impressive. Jason Sullivan and Olivia waited for the ambulance. They watched as the swarm of dutiful descendants from the Sullivan family bustled Grandpa Sullivan onto the ambulance, apparently all intending to go to the hospital with him. Aren't you going? Jason Sullivan asked Olivia as they sat on a park bench. Olivia watched the ambulance, her grandfather being loaded onto the stretcher and the cluster of relatives. Her expression was complicated. It's fine, as long as Grandpa's okay. The others from the family will be with him. You could tell she wasn't fond of her relatives. Understandable, really, considering they were the Sullivans, a family practically defined by their suffocating sense of duty. Michael Thompson remarked mischievously, Hey, with that many people piling in after the ambulance, you think they'll get pulled over for exceeding the vehicle's capacity? Olivia couldn't help but smile, though she felt it wasn't quite the right time for laughter. She gave him a light, exasperated punch on the arm. You're impossible. Can't you be serious for a second? Michael chuckled, saying casually, just trying to cheer you up. He didn't think anything of it, but to Olivia, his words carried a different weight. Her cheeks flushed slightly again. Olivia turned her head away, murmuring, Today. Thank you. Really? Michael looked at her, noticing with some surprise that even the tips of her ears were red. He teased, Just a verbal thank you? That doesn't seem very sincere. W, what did you have in mind, then? Nothing too unreasonable, okay? How about dinner? That's not too much to ask, is it? That's it? Olivia was surprised his request was so simple. She'd expected something more demanding, especially since she hadn't forgotten this guy knew about her secret savings. If Gorgeous goes home tonight, she'll just be eating all alone, won't she? Should grab dinner with her. I mean, she just saw her grandpa get carted off in an ambulance. It's normal to be scared or shaken up. This guy, was he actually thinking about her? Olivia's expression turned thoughtful. The faint, unsettled feeling in her chest began to ripple outwards, growing stronger. Besides, we still haven't talked about our serious business. Talk about what? Dating? Olivia tensed up immediately. She thought she'd misunderstood things today, that Michael had only asked her out to help save her grandfather. But now, maybe not. Michael had already gotten up to leave. After taking a couple of steps, he realized Olivia hadn't followed. He turned back, puzzled. Aren't you coming? I'm coming. Olivia trailed behind Michael Thompson, her thoughts a tangled mess. Since her grandfather really had suffered a heart attack, it meant the thoughts she'd overheard from Michael were real. The man was actually from the future. Which meant, was he really her future husband? Olivia hadn't truly believed it before, but now, she was about 70% convinced. It would explain how Michael knew how much money was in her secret savings, how he knew her periods were worse than most girls, how he knew her grandfather would have a heart attack today. And there was no way he could know she could hear his thoughts, so Michael couldn't be lying to himself in his own head, could he? But now Olivia faced a dilemma. If Michael confessed his feelings for her soon, should she accept? Before yesterday, Olivia wouldn't have hesitated. It would have been an absolute no. Even just a little while ago, she'd been planning to somehow counterattack when he confessed. But now, she honestly didn't know. Every time she thought about Michael, her mind just felt scrambled, making it impossible to think clearly. And deep down, a persistent voice kept whispering, "This is your future husband. This is your future husband." Olivia snuck a peek at Michael walking ahead of her. Clean-cut, bright, always smiling. He was actually kind of cute. Olivia blushed again. Even though Michael hadn't noticed, she guiltily averted her eyes. She suddenly realized she didn't actually dislike Michael. But they barely interacted before yesterday. Starting to date today. Wouldn't that be way too fast? Besides, this was high school, a critical time. Olivia had never planned on dating in high school. She wanted to focus on her studies and get into an Ivy League university. That was her chance to change her future. Plus, her family was incredibly strict. If they found out she was dating someone in high school, just the thought of the Sullivan family made Olivia's expression dim. Lost in these thoughts, Olivia didn't notice when Michael suddenly stopped walking ahead of her. She bumped right into him, her nose meeting his back in an abrupt, close encounter. Michael Thompson turned around to see Olivia Sullivan covering her nose, eyes watering. He frowned thoughtfully for a moment, then clapped his hands together. Trying to fake an injury? What are you talking about? Why did you stop so suddenly? Because we're here. Michael Thompson stepped aside, and Olivia Sullivan finally saw the kind of place he'd brought her to. It was a rundown diner with only 2 tables inside. The cooking area and dining space were combined, and the place looked like it had been around for ages. Olivia Sullivan had been lost in thought the whole way and hadn't paid attention to where Michael Thompson was taking her. Michael Thompson led the way inside. Seeing Olivia Sullivan hesitating, he turned back. "What are you standing there for? Come on in." Well, you don't have to save money for me. Let me treat you to KFC, Olivia Sullivan said, pointing somewhat sheepishly to a KFC across the street. She thought Michael Thompson was trying to be frugal on her behalf. But unexpectedly, Michael Thompson wrinkled his nose, looking reluctant. "Why eat that foreign junk food? Isn't it my turn to pick the place today? Come on." "Oh, all right then." Olivia Sullivan could only brace herself and follow him into the diner. She rarely ate out, and even when she did, she would never choose a small, unofficial-looking place like this without even a proper sign. Fortunately, while the diner was old and worn, it was still clean. The chairs just creaked loudly when sat upon, and the wooden tables had a few splinters. There were only 2 tables. Michael Thompson chose the one by the window, and Olivia Sullivan sat down across from him. The owner, a warm, middle-aged woman in her 50s, asked, "What can I get for you?" "2 meatball subs. Make mine large, no cilantro. Hers can be small, add some vinegar, and 2 deviled eggs. Give me a bottle of iced Coke, and just a cup of hot water for her." There was no menu in the diner, not that Michael Thompson needed one. He ordered familiarly, without even asking Olivia Sullivan for her preferences. But Olivia Sullivan was surprised to realize Michael Thompson had clearly remembered her little eating habits. Michael Thompson didn't even realize he'd given himself away. He had simply ordered out of habit. But whether it was a slip-up or not, it didn't really matter anymore. Not since Olivia Sullivan had been able to hear his thoughts from the moment he'd returned. He just wasn't aware of that fact himself. Since they were the only customers, the food arrived quickly. Michael Thompson looked at his bowl, a meatball sub. It had a dark, savory broth. irregular meatballs filling half the bowl, garnished with seaweed and dried shrimp. It looked quite appetizing. He scooped up a few meatballs with his spoon, took a bite, and felt instantly satisfied. It tasted just like he remembered. He hadn't actually come here much during high school. He'd stumbled upon it later, after he started dating Olivia Sullivan, during a trip back to Green Valley. In the following years, he basically came here for a meal every time he returned to Green Valley. Right now, in '08, a regular meatball sub here only cost $5, and a large was just $8. Deviled eggs were only a quarter each. By 2021, the price of one sub would jump to $15, and deviled eggs would be $2 apiece. Prices sure rose a lot faster than the average person's salary. Olivia Sullivan looked down at her own meatball sub, served in a chipped bowl, and hesitated, clutching her spoon. But seeing Michael Thompson eating without a care, she put aside her reservations and tentatively took a bite. Her eyes instantly lit up. It tasted much better than she had expected. They ate in silence. Michael Thompson was lost in thought, while Olivia Sullivan was simply accustomed to not speaking during meals. Besides, she was busy eavesdropping on Michael Thompson's thoughts. She found listening in quite interesting, especially since Michael Thompson often thought about future events, which felt novel to her. After a few bites of his meatball sub, Michael Thompson put down his spoon and started peeling a deviled egg. Once peeled, he separated the white, ate the yolk, then placed the egg white onto a small saucer and gently pushed it across the table to Olivia Sullivan. Olivia Sullivan's eyes widened. She slowly lowered her gaze to the peeled egg white on the saucer. Michael Thompson snapped back to reality, thinking, oops, bad move. A habit formed over time. It felt completely out of place right now. He quickly scrambled for an explanation. Actually, I don't really like the white part, but throwing it away is such a waste. We shouldn't waste food, gotta support the National Clean Plate Initiative. Was there even a Clean Plate Initiative in '08? He wondered briefly. Oh well, whatever. He told a little lie. Apart from the yolks of salted duck eggs, he actually disliked the yolks of any other eggs. Olivia Sullivan watched his hurried attempt to explain, finding it rather amusing. She picked up the disposable chopsticks from the table, lifted a piece of the peeled egg white, and took a bite. As she looked up and met Michael Thompson's stunned gaze, she covered her mouth with her hand. Once she'd swallowed, she said simply, wasting food is bad, right? Seems like she didn't suspect anything. Michael Thompson let out a sigh of relief, offered a small smile, and went back to eating. After they finished eating, Olivia Sullivan watched Michael Thompson, feeling a little nervous. They finished the meal, so this guy, isn't he going to confess now? But she stared at him anxiously for a while, and Michael Thompson gave no reaction. His inner thoughts were filled with completely unrelated things. It's Saturday today, my favorite variety show is on tonight. Kinda miss those days before computers and smartphones, when the whole family would gather around the TV. Haven't really watched TV in years. Can't you think about something important? Olivia Sullivan glared at him, puffing her cheeks slightly. Stare. Michael Thompson finally noticed her staring at him. Why are you looking at me like that? He asked, puzzled. Go pay the bill. Haven't you seen the owner watching us for ages? She probably thinks we're going to dine and dash. Olivia Sullivan. She glanced guiltily towards the owner and saw that the woman was indeed watching them. Michael Thompson was probably right. Flushed with embarrassment, Olivia Sullivan grabbed her wallet and went to pay. When she came back after paying, she found Michael Thompson leaning against the window frame, gazing outside. Noticing her return, he said softly, "It's snowing." Snowing? Olivia Sullivan looked out the window curiously and was delighted to see snowflakes actually drifting down. In 2008, there were unusually heavy snows. Even her southern city experienced some rare heavy snowfall. Snow wasn't a novelty up north. It could start in November and not melt until March, making walking treacherous and becoming tiresome after a while. But down south, especially in a place like theirs that went years without seeing snow, a snowfall was almost as exciting as a major holiday. Olivia Sullivan felt that way too. Seeing the snow instantly lifted her spirits, as if all the day's worries had been swept away. As she was watching the flakes drift down, she noticed Michael Thompson suddenly lean close to the window pane and gently breathe out onto the glass. His warm breath instantly created a patch of condensation on the cold glass. Olivia Sullivan. ? What's he doing? Just as Olivia Sullivan was wondering, she saw Michael Thompson raise his finger and begin to draw on the patch of condensation, using the fog glass as his canvas and his fingertip as a brush. With just a few quick strokes, a remarkably lifelike portrait took shape. When Olivia Sullivan saw clearly whom Michael Thompson had drawn, she gasped, covering her mouth. Her breath hitched, and her mind went completely blank. The portrait on the glass. It was unmistakably her. Outside, snow continued to fall, dusting the nearby treetops white. Inside, the firelight flickered, casting a warm glow on the faces of those within. It was hard to tell if the blush was from the fire's heat or the subtle flutter of a heart skipping a beat. Olivia Sullivan stared, transfixed, at the drawing on the window pane, her hands covering her mouth. Her glistening eyes held a myriad of unspoken girlish thoughts. So sneaky. Really, so sneaky. This is totally unfair. Do you like it? Michael Thompson asked, looking at her with a smile. But she couldn't meet Michael Thompson's gaze just then. She shyly lowered her head, mumbled for a moment, then softly nodded. Michael Thompson was quite pleased with her reaction. He figured he'd set the stage enough. It was time to get down to business. He cleared his throat, straightened up, his expression turning serious. He gestured with his hand. Olivia Sullivan, there's something important I need to discuss with you. Please sit down. As the words left his lips, Olivia Sullivan felt her heart leap into her throat. It's happening, it's happening, it's happening. A wave of maidenly reserve and shyness made her want to flee. But in the end, she sat down, pretending she hadn't noticed anything, putting on an air of nonchalance. Yet, the hand holding her water glass trembled so badly that the splashing water betrayed her inner turmoil. She quickly set the glass down, fanning her face with her hand and forcing an awkward laugh. Wow, it's a little warm in here. Michael Thompson was internally puzzled. Warm? It was snowing outside, and the room had no AC or central heat. If Aunt Maggie hadn't lit the stove, it would be freezing. But he brushed aside these minor details. The priority was discussing their business with Olivia Sullivan. So, Miss Olivia Sullivan, what do you think of my drawing? The drawing? It's nice. You might not believe this, but I'm actually quite confident in my artistic abilities. Michael Thompson launched into a lengthy explanation of his strengths. Huh? Olivia Sullivan blinked, looking at him, a bit confused. Can you just get to the point already? What's all this about drawing? Sure, it's good, but is that really the point right now? Shouldn't the point be us? Could it be? Is this his first time confessing to a girl? Is he nervous? Olivia Sullivan had initially tried to patiently listen to Michael Thompson, but he showed every sign of rambling on indefinitely. After holding back for what felt like ages, she finally lost her patience, slammed her hand on the table, and stood up. Michael Thompson, whatever you want to say to me, just say it. I'm ready. Michael Thompson's eyes instantly lit up. He slapped the table. All right, I like your directness. He took a deep breath, his expression becoming serious again. Olivia Sullivan, would you be willing to be my... Olivia Sullivan felt her heart pounding in her throat again. Here it comes, here it comes. This has to be it. Investor. Oh, well, what did you say? They spoke almost simultaneously, but the latter half of Olivia Sullivan's sentence cracked from shock. Michael Thompson looked at her stunned expression, completely bewildered. Investor. Wasn't that what I was just talking about? Looks like just showing off my skills isn't enough. I should probably wait a couple of days, prepare a proper business proposal, and then approach the pretty girl. It'll be easier to convince her. TSK. Is it always this hard to get your hands on your future wife's little stash? Strange, what's that creak? Creak. Sound? Does the shop have mice? That creak. Creak. Wasn't mice. It was the sound of Olivia Sullivan grinding her teeth. She looked ready to shatter them. Her tightly clenched fists trembled, and her face flushed red then paled, like a rapid-fire mass change. After all that, Michael Thompson never intended to confess to her today at all. She'd been letting her imagination run wild the entire time. That guy was only after her savings. Olivia Sullivan was mortified and furious, wishing the ground would swallow her whole. She glared angrily at Michael Thompson, who was still trying to convince her. This initial investment will go towards setting up an art studio, mostly hiring staff, buying equipment, and promotion. I'll probably pay back the principal within 3 months. After that, how about I give you 30% of the profits? Seeing Olivia Sullivan's face turn livid, he thought she wasn't satisfied and reluctantly added another finger to the 3 he was holding up. 40%. 40 for you, 60 for me. That's my final offer. I'm telling you, don't push it. If ever there was a perfect description for Olivia Sullivan's mood right then, it was furious embarrassment. What are you crying for? I'm the one making the big concession here, and I'm not crying. Wait, what are you, Al? Olivia Sullivan stomped hard on Michael Thompson's foot. He yelped, clutching in pain. She ran for the door, but paused at the entrance, still fuming. Turning back, she yelled at Michael Thompson through her tears. Michael Thompson, you are the absolute worst. Michael Thompson stared dumbfounded as she ran off, unable to process what had just happened for a long moment. What had he done to offend her? He'd even helped save her grandpa. How could she turn on him like that? Even if she didn't want to invest, couldn't they still part amicably? This was ridiculous. When Michael Thompson got home, Margaret Thompson was in the living room, watching TV and knitting. She quickly noticed her son limping as he came in. "What happened to you?" she asked, surprised. "It snowed outside. Slipped on some ice," Michael Thompson mumbled, unable to tell the truth. He couldn't exactly say his future daughter-in-law had stomped on his foot. Margaret would just assume he'd been messing around with some girl again. Still, Michael Thompson was puzzled. Was the beautiful girl from high school really always this hot-tempered? That didn't seem right. Didn't he know his own wife? Sure, she could be a bit childish with him sometimes, but overall, she was supposed to be sweet, gentle, and reasonable. Could she have been like this back in high school, and he just hadn't realized it because they didn't interact much? Did later life experiences make her more mature and reserved? Or maybe, was it just that time of the month? Michael Thompson couldn't figure it out. He tossed his backpack onto a cabinet, walked over to the dining table, and sat down next to Robert Thompson, who was having a pre-dinner drink. Staring up at the ceiling, he sighed, "Dad, are women really that hard to figure out?" Robert Thompson put down his glass and gestured discreetly with his chopsticks towards Margaret Thompson watching TV in the living room. "Just look at your mother, wouldn't you say?" Michael Thompson glanced over at Margaret Thompson, realization dawning. "Yeah, definitely not easy. Right?" Father and son burst out laughing, earning a puzzled, suspicious glance from Margaret in the living room. At dinner that evening, Michael Thompson sensed something was off about the atmosphere at home. Margaret and Robert Thompson seemed preoccupied, both picking at their food in silence. Michael Thompson looked from his mom to his dad, almost thinking the couple had gotten into a fight. He had planned to come clean with him tonight, but suddenly he didn't know how to bring it up. Halfway through dinner, his younger cousin, Ethan Thompson, son of Uncle Benjamin Thompson, burst in excitedly. "Uncle Ben, Aunt Maggie, my dad says you need to come to the main house for a meeting." Margaret and Robert Thompson exchanged a look and put down their bowls and chopsticks. "Son, you finished eating," Robert said. "Your mom and I need to discuss something with your aunts and uncles. Do your homework when you're done." "What's it about?" "Nothing for kids to worry about," Robert Thompson mumbled before quickly leaving the house with Margaret. Michael Thompson watched them leave, confused. Then, something occurred to him. A Thompson family meeting? Sounded serious. Could it be about that? It was about that time. During Michael Thompson's sophomore year of high school, two major events occurred that threatened the entire Thompson family's fate. The first was the stock market issue. His youngest uncle had sunk the family's savings into it, dragging his second and eldest uncles down with him. They nearly went bankrupt. And the second matter was likely the reason the adults were calling a family meeting now. To understand this, you first need to know about the Thompson family and Pine Creek Town. Pine Creek Town was a small town within Pine Ridge County, but it wasn't ordinary. It had mines. And these weren't just any mines. They produced valuable stone used for carving seals and decorative pieces. The Thompson family was in this business. Michael Thompson's father and his two brothers, the second and eldest uncles, were all craftsmen carvers. In his past life, after failing the college entrance exams, Michael Thompson had planned to take over the family craft and become a stone carver. But that summer, while helping his father in the workshop, he accidentally severed his right middle finger on a cutting machine. It didn't heal properly after being reattached, leaving the finger unable to bend or straighten, completely immobile. He'd had no choice but to give up on carving. Near the end of '07, another mine deposit was discovered in Pine Creek Town. The government was seeking bids from contractors, which was the reason for the upcoming Thompson family meeting. Before his rebirth, the Thompson family had wanted to take a shot at securing the contract, but because of the youngest uncle's stock market fiasco, almost all their available funds were gone. In the end, they had to give up. This time around, although the uncle's situation wasn't fully resolved yet, Michael Thompson was determined to get his family out of the market before the crash. Funding the mining contract shouldn't be an issue. This new mine was the Thompson family's chance to strike it rich. Because he knew this mine would yield such a high quantity of top-quality stone, it was a surefire moneymaker. Mom and Dad looked so worried. It's almost certainly about this. But since the issue with my youngest uncle is as good as resolved, this mining contract shouldn't be a problem anymore, Michael Thompson mused. He decided not to get involved in the adults' discussion and went back to lounging on the sofa, watching TV. Meanwhile, at the Sullivan residence. Tonight, the large Sullivan villa felt unusually deserted. With Arthur Sullivan hospitalized, most of the Sullivan family had rushed off to be with him. In Olivia Sullivan's room, the main lights were off. Only a small reading lamp on the nightstand glowed. A slight bulge showed under the covers on the bed. A petite figure was hidden beneath, sitting up and punching a teddy bear. Idiot Michael Thompson. Idiot Michael Thompson. Olivia Sullivan vented her frustration with Michael Thompson on the teddy bear. Cotton stuffing was already starting to come out of the poor thing. Her eyes were red, and tear tracks still glistened on her cheeks. She had clearly just been crying. Olivia Sullivan felt she'd never been so embarrassed in her entire life. To think she'd made such a ridiculous mistake, especially after she'd finally worked up the courage and made up her mind. Just thinking about it made her furious. All those times he thought, wifey this and wifey that. Why couldn't he just confess properly? After all that, it turned out he was just after her little stash of money. Shameless jerk. Tooey. The more she thought, the angrier she got. She grabbed the teddy bear, squeezed its neck, and muttered, "That'll teach you to lead people on. That'll teach you." After venting for a while, she gradually calmed down. Thinking it over, she realized she couldn't really blame Michael Thompson for what happened today. From start to finish, she had been the one eavesdropping on his thoughts and jumping to conclusions. Michael Thompson hadn't actually said anything misleading out loud, and besides, he had helped save her grandfather. If anything, she was the one who'd struck Michael Thompson twice today. He was probably still wondering what that was all about. Okay, well, you did save my grandpa, so I guess I can reluctantly give you a little reward. She mumbled this, holding the teddy bear, her face bright red. Then, she slowly leaned her face towards the bear. Mwah. Just as her puckered lips were a hair's breadth from the teddy bear, the phone on her nightstand rang. Ring, ring. Olivia Sullivan jumped, mortified, and instinctively shoved the teddy bear under her bottom. The poor bear's face was squashed flat. She smoothed her hair, trying to act nonchalant as she answered the phone. Hello. Olivia, come down to City General Hospital. Your grandfather's awake and asking for you. It was her mother calling. Olivia Sullivan froze for a second, then beamed with delight. Okay, I'm on my way right now. She quickly hopped out of bed and hurried to pick out clothes, ready to change and head out. After waking up in the hospital, Arthur Sullivan still felt weak, but his mind was clear. Thinking back to the afternoon's events sent shivers down his spine. The doctor said he was lucky to have arrived in time, that someone had administered first aid at the scene. Otherwise, he wouldn't have even made it to the hospital. They would have just taken him straight to the crematorium. Arthur Sullivan remembered his rescuer, a young man. He also vaguely recalled hearing his granddaughter's voice, but his consciousness had been hazy, so the memory was indistinct. Later, when he fully regained consciousness, he opened his eyes to find himself in a hospital room surrounded by his family. Who saved me? These were Arthur Sullivan's first words. His eldest son immediately responded, Dad, as soon as I heard what happened, I dropped everything at work and rushed over. Arthur Sullivan frowned and glared at him. Then his daughter-in-law chimed in, trying to take credit. Dad, it was Olivia who found you. She called everyone at 9/11. Olivia? Arthur Sullivan shook his head. No, that wasn't right. He distinctly remembered waking up briefly. It was a young man who had saved him. However, he did seem to recall the young man calling his granddaughter's name, which meant she was there too, and they must have known each other. Arthur Sullivan looked around the crowded room, but didn't see his granddaughter. He asked his daughter-in-law, Where's Olivia? Her face turned awkward. She's at home. Dad, I'll call her right now. It's so late. It's fine. She's definitely still awake. I'll tell her to come. Arthur Sullivan hadn't wanted to disturb her, intending to see her the next day, but his daughter-in-law, oblivious, dialed the number. Olivia, your grandpa's awake. Come to the hospital. A pause. Yes, City General. The driver's not available? Just take a cab. Arthur Sullivan frowned, listening to the conversation, but with so many people present, he held his tongue. As soon as he was awake, his children fussed over him, constantly asking, How are you feeling? And Dad, would you like some fruit? Business associates also streamed in to offer their condolences. The room became so noisy that the nurses had to come in several times to quiet them down. Exasperated, Arthur Sullivan finally told them all to get out, to leave him in peace. He wouldn't see anyone, not even his friends, until the next day. Huff, huff. Olivia arrived at the hospital, slightly breathless. Her mother had repeatedly urged her on the phone, so she'd run all the way from the taxi. Outside the room, she was surprised to see her entire family standing in the corridor. Mom, Dad, what's going on? Your grandpa wouldn't let us in. All right, you go in. Olivia's mother stepped closer and whispered, Say all the right things to your grandpa. You did well this time. I'll buy you something nice when we get back. She added, It's a good thing I was there. Otherwise, your eldest uncle would have taken all the credit for saving your grandpa. Olivia gave her mother a strange look. Mom, I didn't save Grandpa. It was all right, your grandpa's waiting. Go in. Olivia's mother gave her a gentle push. Inside, she saw her grandfather sitting up in bed, secretly smoking a cigarette. They looked at each other. Arthur Sullivan jerked his head towards the door. Close it. The nurses will give me a lecture if they see this. Grandpa, you can't smoke right now. Olivia walked over and took the cigarette from his mouth, breaking it and tossing in the trash. You're still in the hospital. Arthur Sullivan chuckled. A habit of several decades isn't easy to break. Despite his words, he put the cigarettes away in front of his granddaughter. Only with Olivia did he drop the facade of the Sullivan family patriarch. And with her parents absent, Olivia felt less restraint around him. Peeling an apple for him, she said, Grandpa, you really need to quit. The doctors told you so many times. And last time, he wanted to keep you for observation, and you. All right, I'm in the hospital now, aren't I? I'll stay for a few days. Arthur Sullivan gave in, neatly avoiding the subject of quitting. He looked at his granddaughter and asked cheerfully, that young man who saved me today, is he your boyfriend? Olivia's hand slipped, almost cutting her finger with a knife. He's not my boyfriend. I have nothing to do with him. Despite her denial, her face flushed and her eyes darted around. Arthur Sullivan, a seasoned observer of human nature, understood perfectly. He chuckled. Is that so? Of course. I just want to focus on my studies and get into a good college. Olivia defended herself. Besides that guy, he's really annoying. He's the person I hate the most right now. What's his name? Michael Thompson. He's your classmate, right? Where does he live? Is he a local? How many people are in his family? Grandpa, are you interrogating me? Grandpa's just asking. I told you, I have nothing to do with him. He's just a very, very ordinary classmate. I don't recall my granddaughter being asked out on weekends by just ordinary male classmates. Olivia was speechless. She angrily focused on peeling the apple, not noticing that she was almost down to the core. Arthur Sullivan leaned back against his pillows and stroked his chin. Regardless, he saved my life. We need to thank him properly. I know. Tell you what, when I get out of the hospital, let's invite Michael Thompson over for dinner. Olivia stopped peeling. She stared at her grandfather in disbelief, but he seemed entirely serious. She hesitated, lowering her eyes. Grandpa, maybe not. That won't do. I've already taken him out to dinner to thank him. I haven't thanked him, and it's just a meal. Olivia fell silent, forcing a smile and dropping her objections. But inviting Michael to her house, she wasn't so keen on that. She didn't want him to see her family situation, even though he probably already knew. The next day, Sunday, Michael Thompson was sitting on his bed in his room, staring at the homework on his lap desk, his brow furrowed in frustration. He couldn't figure it out. His grades in high school had been pretty good, but he'd forgotten everything he learned practically the moment he graduated. It was like he'd returned it all to the teachers, not retaining a single bit. In contrast, his English, which had been his weak spot in high school, was actually much better now. His job later required frequent trips to Europe, so he'd become fluent, even speaking with a standard London accent. But when it came to math, physics, chemistry, and biology, he was completely lost. Screw this. Michael Thompson had been staring at one math problem for half an hour without solving it. Frustrated, he slammed his pen down on the lap desk. But quitting wasn't an option. Although he had decided to apply to art school, getting into a good art school still depended on academic performance. And Michael Thompson's goal was the Rhode Island School of Design, the top art school in the country, whose academic requirements were just as high as any top-tier university. High school students, above all, needed to study hard and keep improving. Just as Michael Thompson's head was aching, a voice sounded in his mind. System has detected subject content. High school math. High school math has now been added to the Dream Training course. Please select to begin learning. The abrupt voice startled him for a moment, and then a virtual screen, the system interface, appeared before him. Host, Michael Thompson. Age, 17. Skills, appraisal, dexterous hands, stability. Titles, none. Title bonus, none. Achievements, none. Dream Training course, high school math. Learning progress, high school math, 0. Compared to the last time he saw it, the system interface now included a Dream Training course with an option button next to it. Michael Thompson hesitated for a moment, then clicked the option button next to Dream Training course. Enter Dream Training course. Host advisory. When you choose the Dream Training course, your physical body will enter a state of sleep. Before entering, please ensure your body is in a quiet, ventilated, safe, and dry environment. This system is not responsible for any accidents that occur during this process. In the Dream Training course, the system will provide the host with optimal guidance. The flow of time within the dream differs from the outside world. The standard ratio is 10-1, meaning 1 hour in the real world equals 10 hours in the dream. Currently, only the 10:1 time dilation is available. Conditions for unlocking other ratios are unknown. Selected course, high school math. Proceed? Michael Thompson mulled it over for a while until he finally understood. This system of his was basically a learning machine. Other people's systems were flashy and cool, granting hosts new skills with a simple BAU, but he had to master skills through laborious studying. Still, it was better than nothing. Michael Thompson didn't hesitate any longer and selected yes. As soon as he confirmed his choice, an overwhelming wave of drowsiness washed over him without warning. His eyelids felt heavier and heavier until he couldn't keep them open anymore. His body slumped backward onto the pillow with a soft thud, and he fell into a deep sleep. Hey, kiddo, get up, get up. I tell you to do some homework, and I find you sleeping. An hour later, Michael Thompson was shaken awake by Margaret Thompson grabbing his collar. When he woke up, he was still a bit dazed, his mind lingering in the dream training course lesson. He had to admit the dream training course was seriously amazing. It was like the system had found him the best tutor imaginable. The explanations were incredibly detailed and easy to understand, starting right from freshman year material to catch him up. Moreover, in the dream training course, his focus was absolute, and his learning efficiency was terrifyingly high. At this rate, it wouldn't even take a month for his grasp of high school subjects to reach the level it was before his rebirth. After giving him a good scolding, Margaret Thompson brought a small stool upstairs from downstairs, sat down in his room, and watched him do his homework while she knitted. Michael Thompson had no choice but to grit his teeth and work. When he encountered problems he didn't know, he'd just scribble down some random formulas. His mom wouldn't understand them anyway, as long as the space wasn't blank. After all, he'd only studied for 10 hours and only math. Around noon, Robert Thompson seemed to have landed a big job and didn't come home for lunch, staying at the workshop. So, mother and son just made some noodles for a simple lunch. After lunch, Michael Thompson put on warm clothes and got ready to go out. Mom, I'm heading out. Going out again? Didn't you just go out yesterday? Just strolling around town. Thought I'd drop by and see how Uncle Ben Thompson is doing. Wait a second. Margaret Thompson bustled around in the kitchen for a moment and came out holding a thermos. Your dad probably just had some crackers or something for lunch. There's some noodle soup left over. Take it to him. Michael Thompson took it and said cheerfully, Okay, I'm off then. Leaving the house, Michael Thompson walked down the street. The snow from yesterday hadn't melted yet, and the sounds of children laughing and playing, having snowball fights, filled the air. If you looked at Pine Creek Town on a satellite map, you'd see a long, narrow flatland surrounded by mountains. Most residential areas in Green Valley shared this kind of terrain. Michael Thompson's house was on the west side of Pine Creek Town, and he was heading to Robert Thompson's workshop on the east side. Because the area produced stone, many locals worked with it. This also attracted outsiders who came to apprentice and learn stone carving. Over time, a sculpture town had formed on the east side of town, filled entirely with businesses related to stone carving. Robert Thompson's workshop was located here. The storefront wasn't large, but it had 2 levels. The front of the ground floor was a retail area for miscellaneous goods, while the back was the workspace. The upstairs space was cramped, containing just a bed and some daily necessities, a place for Robert Thompson to sleep when he was too busy to go home. When Michael Thompson arrived, the screeching sound of a cutting machine echoed from inside the workshop. He went around to the back of the workshop and saw Robert Thompson busy at the cutting machine, slicing a block of raw stone. And Robert Thompson was wearing the mask Michael Thompson had given him. Michael Thompson smiled. It seemed his dad was finally listening to him this time. He knocked on the window. Robert Thompson, busy working, heard the noise, turned his head, saw his son peering in, stopped what he was doing, and came over to open the window. What are you doing here? Just checking in on the hard-working comrade, supporting the family. Michael Thompson climbed in through the window, holding up the thermos. Mom figured you probably just had crackers for lunch, so she sent me over with some noodle soup. Why didn't you use the door? Who taught you to climb through windows like a thief? Robert Thompson grumbled, but then chuckled, took the thermos, and led Michael Thompson into the shop area. Michael Thompson sat in the shop, watching Robert Thompson across from him happily slurping the noodle soup. Dad, I need to talk to you about something. He hadn't just come to see his dad today. He had something specific in mind. Robert Thompson immediately gave him a wary look. Need money again? I knew this soup wouldn't come cheap. It's not about money. Oh, well, that's easier. Go ahead, what is it? Robert Thompson visibly relaxed and went back to slurping his soup. Michael Thompson said seriously, I want to learn the craft from you. This was something he had always wanted to do. Before his rebirth, because of his fingers, he'd actually feared stone carving, but having grown up immersed in it, he'd also wanted to learn. But in this life, he just wanted to do what he loved. Besides, that accident hadn't happened, and his fingers were fine. So, he wanted to learn. Cough, cough. Robert Thompson choked abruptly, covering his mouth and coughing repeatedly. He grabbed a tissue and wiped his mouth. Why bring this up all of a sudden? And you're a sophomore now. Aren't you applying to college? I am, but I don't want to take the regular exams. I want to apply to art school, study fine arts. Robert Thompson sucked in a breath, staring wide-eyed at him. He reached out to feel his son's forehead. Are you running a fever? What nonsense are you talking? Michael Thompson slapped his hand away. Dad, I'm serious. I've already made up my mind. Robert Thompson looked at his son's earnest expression, realized he wasn't joking, and hesitantly took a couple more sips of soup. After a long pause, he finally asked, You've really thought this through? I have. Does your mom know? Isn't that why I came to talk to you first? What's there to talk about with me? You're old enough now. If you really want to do this, I can't stop you. Robert Thompson was quite open-minded. He didn't actually care too much about his son's grades. He was more concerned about whether his son was happy. Besides, no one in the Thompson family was particularly academic. Worst case, Michael could learn the family craft after high school, or they could send him abroad to his uncle to learn business. Either way, he wouldn't starve. That's why Michael Thompson had come to talk to Robert first. Michael Thompson pressed his advantage. Dad, how about this? Just teach me a little bit first. Think of it as letting me see how hard it is, so I give up. If I stick with it, then you can teach me properly. How about that? I suppose that could work. But you said you want to apply to art school? You're already a sophomore. Is there still time? There's time, as long as we can get Mom on board. Dealing with the school shouldn't be a problem. Your mom will definitely be angry. That's why we, father and son, need to form a united front. Dad, after all these years of being buddies, you gotta help me out. Robert Thompson was a bit of a softy and couldn't resist his son's pleading. Plus, this was the first time Michael had ever asked him for something with such determination. After hesitating for a while, he agreed. That afternoon, Michael Thompson didn't go home. After leaving Robert Thompson's workshop, he went straight to school. Most high schools held evening study sessions on Sunday nights. Even so, Michael Thompson got to school a bit early, arriving just after 1 p.m. The reason he was so early was that he hadn't finished his homework yet. He arrived really early, just after 1. But when he got there, the classroom was already filled with classmates, all hunched over their desks, scribbling away furiously. They barely glanced up when Michael Thompson walked in before immediately looking back down at their work. Looks like quite a few people had the same idea he did. What was unexpected, though, was that Olivia Sullivan was already there too, sitting at her desk, organizing her pencil case. Michael Thompson glanced at her in surprise. Was the top student in the class here early to copy homework too? Since he wasn't sure how he'd managed to annoy Olivia Sullivan yesterday, he didn't dare risk setting her off now. He didn't even say hello, just went straight to his own seat. Just as he sat down and dropped his backpack, a large, greasy hand slapped him on the shoulder from behind. He turned his head to see a chubby face with big ears way too close to his, sporting a fawning grin. Michael Thompson. Whoa, where'd this pig-headed demon come from? Is that any way to talk to your buddy? I'm hurt. It took Michael Thompson a long moment to suddenly remember this was his high school best friend, Jake Wilson. It wasn't surprising he didn't recognize him right away. Jake Wilson had lost a ton of weight after starting college, undergoing a complete 180-degree transformation into a handsome older guy that younger girls fawned over. Michael Thompson had even recruited him as his personal model. But right now, they were still in high school, and Jake Wilson was still the same Jake Wilson, 6'3" and easily tipping the scales at around 250. Jake Wilson didn't mind Michael Thompson's ribbing and wasn't really mad. His eyes darted back and forth between him and Olivia Sullivan in the front row, a mischievous grin spreading across his face. Michael Thompson, you were staring at Livy Sullivan the second you walked in. Don't tell me you're into that type. Livy Sullivan. That was the nickname the guys in Michael Thompson's sophomore class, Class 1, used for Olivia Sullivan behind her back. Well, that's what a bunch of hormonal teenage boys talk about when they got together. Besides video games, it was the girls in their class. They weren't going to discuss math problems, were they? And Olivia Sullivan was Oakwood High School's campus belle, so naturally, her name came up often. As for why they called her Livy, well, partly because Lolly, her Chinese name characters, sounded like Loli. Plus, Olivia Sullivan was barely 5'1", with a petite frame that seemed young for her age, so the nickname fit pretty accurately. Come on, Michael Thompson, you're not into that type. Jake Wilson leered, using his hands to sketch an impressively large curve in front of his chest. I thought you always had a thing for that girl in the next class. Do you need something or not? Michael Thompson quickly cut him off. Jake Wilson nodded eagerly. Yeah, I do. If you need something, spit it out. If not, get lost. Let me copy your homework. Jake Wilson's grades in the honors class were mediocre, mostly because he was incredibly lazy. Doing homework? Not a chance. But Michael Thompson's grades were great, consistently in the top 5 of the class, which was why Jake always copied his best friend Michael Thompson's assignments. This time, however, Jake Wilson had clearly miscalculated. Michael Thompson silently pulled out his own homework. Except for a few hastily scribbled answers on the top 2 worksheets, the papers underneath were completely blank. Funny you should ask. Why do you think I got here so early? Jake Wilson. Meanwhile, Olivia Sullivan, sitting at the very front, was pretending to organize her pencil case. She hadn't come to school this early to copy homework, obviously. She was waiting for Michael Thompson. What should I do? I need to invite Michael Thompson over for dinner or something. Olivia Sullivan was troubled. Yesterday, she'd stomped on Michael Thompson's foot and run off, and he was probably still completely confused about it. Is he mad at me? But Grandpa insisted I have to invite Michael Thompson over for a meal. Just as she was agonizing over it, Michael Thompson, the person she'd been waiting for, finally arrived. But when Michael Thompson came in, he gave her a strange look. Even the top student is here early to copy homework? What a coincidence. Whose coincidence with you? Olivia Sullivan felt a surge of annoyance. She was first in their class, consistently in the top 3 of their entire grade, always the teacher's model student. She'd never copied homework in her life. But Michael Thompson only glanced at her once before heading straight to his seat without a word. Gorgeous is probably still mad. No idea why, but better not talk to her right now. Setting her off wouldn't be fun. Olivia Sullivan immediately felt conflicted. I'm not angry. Okay, maybe a little, but you're supposed to talk to me. She wanted to start a conversation with Michael Thompson herself, but felt too shy, while Michael Thompson seemed determined not to speak to her, leaving her feeling utterly torn. Right then, Michael Thompson's best friend, Jake Wilson, started chatting with him. She couldn't help but prick up her ears to eavesdrop. Although she couldn't hear their actual conversation, she could guess the gist of it from Michael Thompson's thoughts. What she heard almost made her bristle. What's this Livy stuff? Who came up with that nickname? Do all the guys in class call me that behind my back? I'd rather they called me Gorgeous. Then, when Jake Wilson mentioned that girl from the other class, Michael Thompson quickly shut him down. Olivia Sullivan's eyes gradually widened. Michael Thompson liked other girls in high school. Didn't he like me? And he actually dislikes my. Olivia Sullivan glanced down, seeing her toes without any obstruction. Her face immediately flushed red, and she clenched her teeth, grinding them audibly. This time, the blush wasn't from shyness. It was pure anger. Just then, she heard Michael Thompson's thoughts again. Damn that Jake Wilson. Can't keep his mouth shut. She's right here in the classroom. Wish he heard him. That wouldn't be good. But did I actually like anyone in high school? I don't remember. Wasn't I just focused on studying hard and getting good grades? Before I was reborn, I'd only ever been in one relationship, the kind that lasted a lifetime. These thoughts instantly extinguished the fire in Olivia Sullivan's heart. She pressed her lips together firmly, struggling to suppress a smile. Inside, she felt an indescribable sweetness. After Jake Wilson left Michael Thompson's desk, disappointed, and went off to find his next homework borrowing target, Olivia Sullivan took her own homework out of her bag and walked towards the back of the room, holding the papers. Michael Thompson was currently sitting at his desk, staring at his blank worksheets, his eyes scanning the classmates around the room. Who was I close to back in high school? He couldn't remember clearly, only Jake Wilson, whose friendship had remained solid over the years. As for everyone else, honestly, even now, Michael Thompson couldn't recall the names of most of his classmates. His high school memories felt too distant. He'd rarely attended any high school reunions before being reborn, because they always turned into massive displays of brown-nosing and passive-aggressive remarks. Just as Michael Thompson was agonizing over who to ask to copy homework from, a stack of worksheets slammed down onto his desk with a thump. He looked up to see Olivia Sullivan standing in front of him. Here, you can copy mine. Olivia Sullivan crossed her arms, turning her face away awkwardly. Michael Thompson stared at her for a moment, then suddenly put his hands together in a praying gesture. Olivia Sullivan looked at him, bewildered. What are you doing? Someone so kind and beautiful must be a saint sent to save the suffering. I should pray properly. Or maybe I should just build a shrine to you at home. Olivia Sullivan couldn't help but want to laugh at his teasing words. She bit her lip to control it. Do you say things like that to all girls? Depends on the girl. You mean, depend if they're pretty or not? No, It depends if it's you or someone else, Michael Thompson said with a perfectly straight face. Olivia Sullivan paused for a second before realizing what Michael Thompson meant, feeling a little shy. She tapped Michael Thompson's desk lightly. Just so you know, I'm not letting you copy for free. Michael Thompson sighed, slowly pulling a bill from his pocket and slapping it on the desk. This is all I've got. $10. Who wants your money? Olivia Sullivan slapped his hand away irritably, glanced around furtively, and lowered her voice. Come to my house for dinner this Wednesday. About yesterday. My grandpa wants to thank you in person. Michael Thompson held up a hand, looking righteous. Absolutely not necessary. I was just doing a good deed like a Boy Scout. No reward needed. But Olivia Sullivan could hear his thoughts. Go to the Sullivans for dinner? Am I crazy? Go there now. To watch the Sullivan family's dutiful descendants put on their sickeningly filial performances? If I ever go there, it'll be when I have the power to crash their party. Just barge into the Sullivan house, snatch my wife, stuff her in a sack, throw her over my shoulder, and run home. Now, that would be exciting. You try putting me in a sack. Olivia Sullivan's eyes widened, and she glared at Michael Thompson, puffing her cheeks out in anger. Michael Thompson, however, maintained his righteous facade. Inviting me to dinner as thanks is really unnecessary. If the old gentleman asks my name, just tell him it's Boy Scout. My grandpa already knows about you. He absolutely insists I invite you home for dinner. Truthfully, Olivia Sullivan didn't really want Michael Thompson to come to her family dinner either, but she had no choice. Her grandpa had given her strict orders to thank Michael Thompson in person, no matter what. Seeing Michael Thompson trying every excuse to get out of it, she knew he genuinely didn't want to go. After thinking for a moment, she came up with an idea. How about this? If you agree to come home with me for dinner, I'll consider what you asked me about yesterday. Yesterday, the investment. Michael Thompson's eyes instantly lit up. He had thought tapping into his future wife's private funds was a lost cause. He'd been pretty confident following his original plan, considering how well he knew Olivia Sullivan. But the high school version of Olivia Sullivan, her thoughts were really hard to guess. He'd been about to give up and start thinking about other ways to get startup capital. Now, things had taken an unexpected turn. Michael Thompson weighed his options for a long moment. Going to the Sullivans wouldn't be pleasant, but it wasn't like walking into a lion's den. Besides, in this life, the old man was still around. He could probably keep the weirder Sullivan family members somewhat in check. Worst case scenario, he'd show up right at dinner time and leave as soon as they finished eating. All right, it's a deal. Okay, what are you doing? Olivia Sullivan asked, looking at the hand Michael Thompson extended towards her. He said matter-of-factly, shaking hands. Partnership sealed. Olivia Sullivan stared at his outstretched hand for a long time before hesitantly reaching out her own. Before she could touch his, Michael Thompson took her hand. His hand was large, with long fingers, and his palm felt warm. It was the first time Olivia Sullivan had ever held hands with someone outside her family. She smiled shyly. But just then, she suddenly felt something wet on her thumb. She looked up in astonishment to see Michael Thompson pressing her thumb onto an ink pad he'd produced from somewhere, now guiding her thumb towards a contract. Olivia Sullivan. Caught in the act, Michael Thompson said sheepishly, "A verbal agreement isn't binding, you know? I drafted a little contract, see? Get lost."